Oh, I can't wait to check out this year's Eurovision. I have made a terrible mistake. Yo, quick disclaimer here. While I'd love to just talk about all of the fun songs and performances this year, it would be disingenuous of me to do so without mentioning all of the controversies that happened. That's why this video will be split into two parts. The first part, which I call Good Eurovision 2024 Retrospective, will simply be about the performances and some statistics. And that country will go unmentioned. The second part, which I call Evil Eurovision 2024 Retrospective, will take a look at all of the oopsies that went down. Alright, let's do this. Is that not what the E stands for? I mean, I don't know, you have a plus sign on you and I suck at math, so I thought it was like evil, bad maths. Following Lorene's victory in Liverpool in 2023, Sweden got to host the Eurovision Song Contest for their 7th time. It's also the 2nd time that the contest was hosted in the Malmö Arena, which is the exact same thing that happened when Loreen won in 2012. However, Malmö was a bit of a last resort option. Gothenburg wasn't chosen because the roof of its arena would crumble under the pressure of the required light rig, Örnsköldsvik lacks accommodation, and Stockholm's arena was already booked by the myth, the legend, Taylor Swift. And all of the other cities that made an attempt to host, which I'm not even gonna try to pronounce, just didn't have arenas large enough to meet the EBU's capacity requirements. So Malmö was really the only possibility. But unfortunately for the city, it didn't really even reap the economic benefits of hosting, or at least not as much as other cities have in the past. From what I've heard from people who actually went there to see the event live, most people stayed in Copenhagen instead. The Øresund Bridge connects the two cities across the strait, so traveling between them doesn't take that long, and accommodation was just cheaper in Denmark and less available in Malmö. And also, Malmö had to be the one to keep the protests against that country's participation under control. Wow, okay, I'm already straying away from my own disclaimer, this'll be fun. But it did try to keep tourists in Malmö as much as possible with the Eurovision Village, a temporary rebrand of the Folkets in which some concerts were held. The arena itself had some funny looking cubes overhead, and a plus-shaped floor, both with a ton of LED screens that made it possible to do whatever this is. I still don't know how they did that. Also, wow, looks like the stage was able to predict the winner. EBM. Oh shoot, you're good at maths and performing? The theme art this time around looks like this. What? This unpleasant gradient shows up at your front door? Yeah, I think last year's theme art was kinda peak, so it's a given that it was gonna be not as appealing this year. But I don't entirely see the vision here. It's called Eurovision Lights, and the gradient itself is based on both the Northern Lights and sound equalizers, and was designed to be adaptable to all kinds of formats on different devices. I guess that makes all of these different blocks make a lot more sense, but the art does feel a little busy to me. There's a lot going on here and I don't know how to feel about it. The slogan this year was, United by Music. Well, ain't that familiar? So the EBU liked last year's slogan so much that they were like, hey, let's just keep that one from now on. It's an understandable decision, because it's part of the EBU's strategy to create a strong brand that can expand outside of Europe, so having a consistent slogan makes sense. But I mean, I kinda liked how the past Eurovision slogans changed every year. It gave each contest its own little personality, and it'd be unfortunate to lose those identities. But oh well, as long as the songs keep getting better, then the identity will create itself. There were 37 participants, same as last year, but with Romania dropping out and Luxembourg tagging along. You know, I think Luxembourg had the opportunity to do the funniest thing ever and submit songs that would be popular in the 90s to make it seem like they were stuck there, but no, they actually tried. Darn. Romania dropping out is sad but not too surprising. They got 0 points in the semi-final last year, and they had been struggling to qualify over the last couple years. EBU members Andorra, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Monaco and Slovakia announced that they wouldn't be participating. The first two and Slovakia pointed their lack of finances, and they've also announced that they won't be returning in 2025, but do wish to return at some point. Bosnia is still sanctioned by the EBU due to debts they haven't paid back, so that's a hurdle that needs to be overcome first. And Monaco could return soon due to getting a new broadcaster, which is now independent from a French broadcaster which it formerly relied on. EBU members who didn't announce that they weren't participating, but still didn't, were Bulgaria, Montenegro and North Macedonia, who pointed at financial constraints in earlier years, though Montenegro would like to return soon. Turkey and Hungary, because they're homophobic, Russia and Belarus, because they're suspended, and technically there's also Morocco, but you know, I don't expect them to return anytime soon. Considering potential newcomers to next year's contest, Liechtenstein's national radio broadcaster has applied to join the EBU in order to participate, so we'll just have to wait and see. Keep in mind that it's only a radio broadcaster, so it's likely that participation from just that is impossible. However, more importantly, there are also talks of regular joiners not participating next year. Norway was one of them, but they have since announced they will be joining. The Netherlands, however, demanded structural reforms given the unsafe environment of this year's contest. They'll make a decision in September, but there's a chance that they might not stick around. Sad, but understandable. Hello, this is Extra in Exile from the future, and it's October. I'll talk more about the Dutch later, but for now, they were given an extension to choose if they'll participate or not until November. So we'll see. At the very least, if they don't, Montenegro has now confirmed they'll be rejoining, so the total probably won't decrease. This year there were two hosts. Malin Åkerman is a Swedish and American actress who hosted the contest for the first time. Not much to say about her except that she played the perfect supporting role to Eurovision legend Petra Mede. She has hosted 3 Eurovisions so far, this year's alongside those in 2013 and 2016. In last year's retrospective, I said I would go back and watch some contests of the previous years to get a bit more experience so that this video could be as accurate as possible. But in the end, I watched specifically one of them, and while my decision was partly influenced by which contests people on the internet thought were good, I watched the 2016 contest just so I could watch Petra and Mons perform Love Love Peace Peace. Petra knows what she's doing, and I think that she was probably the only one who could weather the storm that was this year's controversies, with Malin making sure she doesn't crumble under the pressure. The bullet wasn't dodged, but at least it wasn't fatal. The allocation this year has a couple technicalities to discuss before we can actually take a look at the running orders. But first, let's quickly go over how the allocation even works. To keep the competition fair, each country is put in a pot of 6 to 7 countries, with other countries who often vote for each other. 3 of them will compete in the first semi-final, and the other 3 or 4 will compete in the second semi-final, or vice versa. Which one they compete in is also random, as is whether they will perform in the first half or the second half. The reason why that's important is because songs in the first half have a higher chance of being forgotten by the end of the show, which makes being in the second half a lot more desirable. What's important to note though, is that this year the timing for when voting was active changed, though only for the grand final, not the semis. Before, you'd have to wait until every act finished until you were able to vote. This time, on the other hand, voting already opened before the first act even started. Why did the EBU do that? Well, for money. To make things more fair to acts that go earlier, of course. One exception is that the rest of the world vote was open 24 hours before each show, because you can imagine that many people don't want to stay awake in the deep AMs just to vote. This majestically backfired in the EBU's face in the grand final, when the rest of the world vote couldn't be open in time because they were still trying to decide if the Netherlands was going to be disqualified or not. But again, we'll get to that later. The other voting rules that were put in place last year remain, with semi-final qualifications being solely based on the televote, while the grand final is a 50-50 split between the televote and the juries. Last year I said that the semi-final being only based on televotes is bad for performances that rely on the jury to score points, but it might not be as bad as I thought. More on that later. The pots were pretty much the exact same as last year. Sweden automatically qualified for winning and thus got taken out of pot 2, while Ukraine entered pot 3 because they weren't an automatic qualifier anymore. In pot 6, Romania got replaced by Luxembourg, because the other 2/3 of the Benelux just happened to already be in it. How convenient. As for the results of the allocation, first the Big 5 and last year's winner Sweden had to be put in the semi-final, because not only could they vote, another change was made that allowed them to perform in their semi. It gives them an opportunity to revise their performances later if anything was missing or had to be altered, and the public got to see them earlier than usual, so I'd say it's a pretty good change. The Germanics, aka Sweden, the UK and Germany, were put into the first semi, and the Romantics, aka Spain, Italy and France, were put into the second semi. As for the countries who didn't automatically qualify, the first half of the first semi had Ukraine, Cyprus, Poland, Serbia, Lithuania, Croatia and Ireland, and the second half of the first semi had Slovenia, Iceland, Finland, Portugal, Luxembourg, Australia, Azerbaijan and Moldova. Great news for Serbia, Croatia and Slovenia who tend to vote for each other, which definitely played a role in all of them qualifying. Finland getting Sweden to be in their semi also worked out pretty well for them. The first half of the second semi had Austria, Malta, Switzerland, Greece, Czechia, Albania, Denmark and Armenia, and the second half had Estonia, Georgia, the Netherlands, Norway, Latvia, San Marino and Belgium. That's pretty good for Estonia, Latvia, Denmark and Norway, who are all usually voting buddies. Armenia having both Greece and France to rely on was also amazing for them, and especially Belgium and the Netherlands being together very much improves both of their odds of competing in the grand final. Foreshadowing is a literary device which, regarding the grand final running order, since Sweden won last year they had to draw a specific slot, and they got slot number 1. The rest of them went through a similar first half or second half draw as in the semis, but this year also had another twist. Now there was also a producer's choice option, which means that the performances can go whenever the EBU wants basically. This means that 6 countries drew first half, 6 drew second half, and 13 drew producer's choice. The reason for this system is first and foremost to make the show entertaining. It's in the EBU's interest to keep viewers engaged, so it's best to mix up different genres, and not have 4 ballads play right after another, for example. A second reason is that some performances have many props that need to be set up on stage before the performance, and also removed after the performance. So it's best to let those go before and after performances that don't have a lot of props. Because damn, they have to do all of that while the postcard is playing. That's pretty impressive. The countries who drew first half were Greece, Lithuania, Ireland, Luxembourg, the UK, and Germany. Ireland, Greece, and the UK were still placed almost as late in the first half as they could be, minus Latvia, showing how the EBU probably thinks those were heavy hitters who shouldn't go early. That proved to be true for Ireland and Greece, but not quite for the UK. So Ollie being an established artist was likely why the producers put him as late as they could. Second half drawers were Austria, Norway, Slovenia, Finland, Cyprus, and France. The writing was kind of on the wall that Norway wasn't going to do well, because the EBU, knowing that Norway barely qualified in their semi, put them up as soon as they could. Austria and France were given the 2 last places, France because it was one of the heavy hitters, and I like to think that they gave the last spot to Austria because ending on a Eurodance track is simply perfect for Eurovision. All the other countries drew producer's choice, and so they were put all over the place. Ukraine, another one of the heavy hitters, was surprisingly put in the death slot of number 2, named that way because no performance has ever won when performing second. Meanwhile, jury winner Switzerland and televote winner Croatia were given very late slots so that they could have a nice and fair battle. Alright, enough yapping. You wanna see the show? Let's see the show. But first of all, some of these performances have some major flashing lights. I don't know if they're enough to trigger epilepsy or anything, but keep it in mind. Alright, let's go. The first semi-final was held on the 7th of May. It opened with Eleni Ferreira performing Fuego, with which she placed second for Cyprus in 2018, Eric Saada performing Popular, with which she placed third for Sweden in 2011, and Chanel performing Slow Mo, with which she placed third for Spain in 2022. Fuego is here because the performance was directed by a Swede, and the lyrics were co-written by Swedes. Funnily enough, that fact will be made fun of in the second semi-final interval act. Popular is here because Eric performed for Sweden and is half Swedish, half Palestinian. He's also wearing a nice looking scarf on his arm. I'm sure that won't be important later. And Slow Mo is here because, they felt like it. I don't know, it's a good song. The official reason Malin and Petra gave for the inclusion of those 3 songs right afterward is that they won our hearts instead of winning the gold, and that they're from 3 corners of the continent to represent the United by Music slogan. I guess that kinda makes sense. Maybe they're saying the former to console Finland for getting second last year, and the latter because they do form a triangle across Europe. Sure, why not? As for the interval acts, first we've got Johnny Logan singing Euphoria. Definitely iconic considering Johnny Logan has won the song contest 2 times, just like Loreen, and Loreen's Euphoria was like a revolution for the contest in 2012, where the performance became as important as the song itself. Probably also referencing how Sweden has now tied Ireland in its amount of victories, and of course that Euphoria was a Swedish entry. So yeah, that's neat. Afterwards, Benjamin Inkoso, who placed 7th for Sweden in 2018, performed a medley of 3 of his songs. It was also very windy, apparently. Props to him for getting through such an endurance test. I have no strong feelings one way or the other, they're just promoting a popular Swedish artist, might as well. Now let's talk about the actual performances. Last year I went in running order, but this time I'll go in score order. So that means first the non-qualifiers of the first semi, then those of the second semi, and then from last to first in the grand final. Let's do this! In 15th place is Iceland, with Hera Björk singing Scared of Heights. Hera was one of 2 returning artists, since she also performed Je ne sais quoi for Iceland in 2010. She qualified and got 19th place. So did that expertise help her do well this time around? Yeah, no. This is the least amount of points anyone got this year. Well, at least it's not 0. Scared of Heights is a bit of an upbeat ballad about falling in love as an adult. It's fine. I wouldn't say it's a song that gives off "Go Girl, Give Us Nothing" energy. She's definitely giving, but I'm also not jumping out of my seat while listening to this. It's truly one of the songs of all time. Like, yeah, it's cool that you're here again, mom, but it feels like this song is still in the mindset of 2010, or even earlier than that. The energy is fantastic, Hera is a great performer, and exudes happy vibes despite the song's lyrics, but it's hard to get people to vote with just that. I will give it this though, the platform she's standing on keeps rising, which is pretty stressful and thus I think it works very well. But we did already see that with France last year, so I can't give it any points for originality. And it's also kind of an obvious thing to do with a song called Scared of Heights. Speaking of points, I want to talk about the statistics of each performance during these entries. But statistics are math, and I'm bad at math, so EBM, you should do it instead. Oh my bad, let me fix that. What about now? Is there any way to give you an actual voice then? Wait, what? Hey, evil bad maths here to talk about the points. The 3 points Iceland received came from Sweden with 2 and Cyprus with 1. So 2/3 of those points came from a sort of voting block. I guess we should have felt it coming. Are you okay? I need professional help after that. I also want to give props to other performers who came close in their respective national finals. But it's immediately kind of awkward to do so because, let's just say we need to talk about something regarding this national final in the evil section. If you know, you know. For now though, good job to Bashar Murat for his performance of his song Wild West, who was a runner-up in the national final. I've honestly been listening to it more than some songs that actually made it to Eurovision. In 14th place is Azerbaijan with Fari featuring Ilkin Dovlatov singing Özünle Apar. There's one general trend I want to mention about this year that I wanted to get to right away, but I couldn't in good faith talk about it during Iceland's entry. And that trend is that every single song this year is good. Like, seriously good. Good to the point where good doesn't cut it anymore if you want to qualify. Özünle Apar is good, but I understand why it's all the way down here. With the competition so stacked, this one was bound to get swept away by the tide. But that doesn't mean that it didn't put up a fight. Because what's cool about it is that Ilkin is singing in the Mugam style, which is a traditional style of music in Azerbaijan. It's a very good addition. Eurovision fans tend to like an ethnic flair. As for the staging, well, they've got hands. Man, I wish I had those. And Fari and Ilkin are wearing clothing that I think would have looked cool if I was 12. Thankfully, I haven't actually mentally aged beyond that point. So yeah, they actually look cool as hell, I love it. But at this point I'm just stalling. I really haven't got much to say about the song or the staging. It's tranquil, it's nice, but I don't really want to feel calm when watching Eurovision. I wanna be a hyperactive little shit wiggling in my chair in excitement. This one doesn't really do that. It just didn't have what it takes. But I see why people would want to listen to it outside of Eurovision though. Alright, points time. I need to brace myself for this. So Azerbaijan gained 11 points, 1 from all of Finland, Lithuania, Poland, Serbia and Ukraine. Not too big, so not too mind-blowing. 6 points from Moldova is a major outlier, however. I'm frankly not sure myself why specifically Moldova gave so many points, so let extra know if you have any ideas. Okay, no, this is the worst, we're never doing that again. Oh. Yeah, I'll take the soul transfer. Azerbaijan used an internal selection to choose their artist, so there's no national final to talk about. Let's move on ahead. In 13th place is Moldova, with Natalia Barbu singing In the Middle. Hi, yes, extra from the future here once again. So I made this section before Natalia announced that she will be appearing in a documentary about how terrible Eurovision and the European Union are, to spur anti-European sentiment in Moldova. So, wow. I don't really like you anymore, and don't want to feature you in this video. But I already spent the effort to edit this, so I'll play this section anyway, but at 3 times the speed. Buckle up! Moldova received 20 points. Azerbaijan transferred some love back to Moldova, and Ukraine does often like to vote for Moldova. It's one of Extra's main points in this one video that you can't watch unless you find a proper community post after all. Portugal giving 5 points is not too shocking. Both speak a Romance language, and Portugal's performances usually also don't do a lot with the staging and focus on the artist's vocal quality, so perhaps it's a bit of solidarity. Portugal usually does it better than Moldova though. Hey, don't be mean! Point taken. Huge props to Valeria Pasha and her song Anti-Princess for tying in the middle in Moldova's national final. She won the public vote, but the tiebreaker was chosen to be based on the jury vote, which Natalia won. It was somewhat controversial, but coming so far is still something to be proud of. But I also must say, please take the NQ with grace next time. In 12th place is Poland with Luna singing The Tower. It's at this point where we're reaching the songs that I think had a chance of qualifying. And a lot of that comes down to the staging actually existing. And as for The Tower, yeah, wow, the staging definitely exists. Hey, this is completely unrealistic to how chess works. There are no red pieces and also no photorealistic human pieces, like come on. With that said though, this is kinda awesome actually. The chess team is unique, it's out there, and I really like that kind of ingenuity in Eurovision. Although there is this one shot that's like, that does not look right. Also to clarify, the rook in chess actually translates to tower in like every other language besides English, including Polish, which I think is where the inspiration for the staging came from. Officially, the metaphor for tower is the rules you build for yourself that lead to your happiness, and to topple the rules that others try to impose on you. See, this is why I don't understand chess players. You can easily win by just building more rooks to overwhelm your opponent. Brilliant move. As for the song itself, well, it's pop. Nowhere near as by the books as a song that Poland sent in last year, but the bar was so low that it was a tripping hazard. Singing it in a cute way also adds a little bit of flavor, but yeah, it's kind of hard to defend it much more than that. I think that this just being a pop song with lyrics that aren't anything to write home about is what caused this to not qualify, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad song in any way. Also, the Polish broadcaster got a lot of backlash last year for possibly rigging its national final, so this year they just did an internal selection instead. Of course, that just gives them even more agency to select a radio-friendly pop song, leaving all of the other broken bodies behind. Poland got 35 points. Poles living in Iceland and Ireland are the largest ethnic minorities living there, and Poles are the most common foreign-born people living in the UK. Sweden also has a pretty sizable Polish diaspora. Lithuania, Ukraine and Germany are of course good neighbors. The points Iceland gave are noticeably high though, and I'm not exactly sure why that is. My humorous theory is that it's because Iceland has some of the most chess grandmasters, considering its tiny population. Food for thought. Humorous theory? You're not supposed to say it's a joke, you need to deliver it like a joke. You little shit. In 11th place, we've got Australia, with Electric Fields singing One Milk Alley, One Blood. Electric Fields consist of the vocalist Zachariah Fielding and keyboarder Michael Ross. Is keyboarder a word? Well, it is now because I said so. Electric Fields tried to represent Australia at Eurovision before in 2019, with their song 2000 and Whatever, coming in second with both the jury and televote, and second overall. This time they were internally selected. As we reached the final NQ of the first semi, we also reached the only one that I personally would have put on the qualifier list. But hey, you can't have everything you want. I'm glad to even see Australia still participating, given that their previous contract only secured their spot until 2023. One Milk Alley has some of my favorite lyrics of any song this year. It's a song about maintaining balance with each other and with the earth, and it does so by using a lot of mathematical concepts. Oh shit! Oh, wow, he really doesn't want to talk about math. Well, now that I'm already here. Australia got 41 points. It's at this point that scores are getting higher, so lower amounts of points can usually be chalked up to people just liking the song. This is the first time the rest of the world vote has shown up though, which makes sense for Australia, seeing as they're not in Europe, and might have gotten many votes from countries closer to it geographically or culturally. Ireland and the UK are Anglophone bodies, and maybe Ukraine felt the lyrics on a deeper level given the current geopolitical state of the country. Finland and Sweden do like giving Australia points, but I'm not sure why. Maybe it's English proficiency. Thank you! Another cool thing about this song is its use of the Yankunyera language in the chorus, an Australian Aboriginal language from Zachariah's home of the API Islands, a local government area for Australian Aboriginals. It's the kind of thing that I always wished Australia would send. Okay, always for me is not that long since I haven't been around these parts before 2022, but you get what I mean. If I had to guess, the reason why this didn't qualify is the opposite of Poland. The song was there, but the staging wasn't. There is a chance that Australia wasn't able to fund Electric Fields enough to provide good staging. Not confirmed, but the lack of money to host a national final clues us into that a little. And unfortunately, it felt a little random as a result. I think they should have spilled some tea on the stage and completely break the LED screens, that would have been funny. But at the very least, everyone cheered when Fred Leone came in with a dang didgeridoo. It was about time one of those showed up in an Australian entry. Hope to see you back next year, Australia. And if not with Australia, then try your luck for Cyprus. The second semi-final was held on the 9th of May. It opened with Malin and Petra performing a parody of Louine's Tattoo. Yeah, this is iconic. You should just watch it yourself. For the interval acts, they decided to bring back 3 previous winners in order to create a huge sing-along. Helena Paparizou with My Number 1, winning for Greece in 2005, Charlotte Perrelli with Take Me to Your Heaven, winning for Sweden in 1999, and Sertab Erener with Every Way That I Can, winning for Turkey in 2003. This is really nice, both with the audience singing along, but also all of those songs are really dang good. I mean, they won their respective contests, of course. But why are specifically these people here? Charlotte is of course Swedish, and Helena is half Swedish, so those make sense. I don't know what the direct link is with Sertab, but I guess I have a small theory. Sweden was blocked from joining NATO by Turkey for a long time, after they submitted their application to join it. So this might be a way of showing off friendly relations between Sweden and Turkey, and egging Turkey on to come back to Eurovision by showing them some nostalgia. Don't take my theory too seriously though. And after that we got... Peak? So, like I said at the start of the video, I watched the 2016 contest just so that I could listen to Love Love Peace Peace. And this song is pretty much its sequel. We Just Love Eurovision Too Much is a musical number performed by Petra and Charlotte Perrelli, who returns once again. Just like Love Love Peace Peace, it's a mockery of the song contest itself, this time making fun of the rest of Europe for allowing Sweden to win so many times. But alongside Petra and Charlotte, Sarah Dawn Finer joined in a bit later performing as Linda Woodruff. So, Linda Woodruff is a character who is canonically an official spokesperson for the EBU at Eurovision and at the Swedish national finals. She previously showed up in the 2013 and 2016 contests because they were also hosted by Sweden. Her quirk is that she mispronounces stuff and is generally not very smart. I have nothing more to say about this character, and I hope we do not meet her ever again. Nobody can be funnier than me on my channel. Anyways, the song is awesome. Let's hear some of it. Oh, so that's why Fuego is here.
And non-political, of course.
Okay, never mind, I'm done, let's move on. Never mind, let's continue actually. So, allowing Kärja to perform his song once again is great. If Sweden wasn't already trying to give Finland an olive branch with earlier jokes, then they definitely did here, even if they are technically making fun of it. Also, Kärja says this at the end of his performance. I'm sure that won't be important later. And all of this makes me wonder, why didn't they save this for the grand final? Love Love Peace Peace was the interval act for its grand final, and I don't think the grand final interval act of this year were all that much better than We Just Love Eurovision Too Much. It's kind of a wasted opportunity in my opinion. In hindsight, there are some reasons why it was probably for the best that it wasn't played in the grand final, but yeah, we'll get to that. But alongside that, it was very nice of Eurovision to do a remix of a song originally made by the creator of Minecraft herself, Hatsune Miku. Oh yeah, and after the qualifiers were announced, there were also these old men. I don't know, they were also there. So anyways, here's a little something from me about the second semi-final. I make my own personal tier list for all of these performances, but I don't share them in the videos in case it would make anyone upset. What I will reveal though, is that my lowest tier has 6 countries in it, and all of them are either one of the big 5 or first performed in the first semi. None of those 6 are from the second semi. This semi was a massacre of good performances. Pick a god and pray. In 16th place is Malta. Oh come on, not again! Malta also placed last in their semi last year, and I'ma be honest, I don't think that was warranted either time. But I guess that's just how the cookie crumbles. So Malta has got Sara Bonici singing Loop. Sara is no stranger to Eurovision, having tried to represent Malta at Junior Eurovision in 2009 and 2010. She got to be a dancer for the junior performance in 2010, and she attempted to enter the main thing in 2022, but placed 12th in Malta's national final. It's great that she got to compete this year, she's a sweetheart. But last place obviously is not the result you wanna see. So, let's play a fun game I like to call Extra is salty and tries to blame Malta's last place on literally anything other than the song being pop. First of all, a downside of the producer's choice option not being done in the semis is that different genres can still collide a lot. And in the case of this semi, we can see a lot of girl bops. They're songs sung by a strong woman with vocals empowering herself and backup dancers being made submissive and peggable. Sorry, no idea what came over me there, but they're there to make the woman more powerful. Cyprus had one of those in the first semi, but they were pretty much all alone, and so they did indeed qualify. The second semi, however, had loads of them. Malta was one, but you also had Austria and Georgia, and to a lesser extent Czechia and Greece. They've got multiple girl bops on loop, and not all of them are going to make it to the final. And Malta unfortunately got first in the running order. I haven't talked about the running order as a problem yet, because in the first semi you actually had many performances that qualified from the first half, which is awesome to see. But Sarah did not get so lucky, unfortunately, going before all of the other 4 songs I mentioned. What may be another issue is that the dance break was quite long. I mean, yeah, okay, the flip was pretty cool and all, but after that it kind of felt like it was dragging on. The dance break is also what they showed off in the recap after everyone performed. And maybe it would have been better to show Sarah singing instead. But oh well, that probably wasn't what made the difference anyway. In any case, this was a great opening for the second semi, no regrets about that. Malta received 13 points, though they're quite concentrated and not spread out a ton. Malta doesn't tend to be in a voting block with anyone else. Armenia often votes for Greece and Georgia, as they did here again. And because the vibes of those 2 performances were similar to Malta's, it could be that Armenia also took Malta under their wing. Greece is geographically pretty close, but besides that it's possible that Greeks just like the performance. San Marino being up here is quite noteworthy though. Since San Marino shares its telephone system with Italy, their jury is instead the one that gives out 100% of the points in the semis. Could this mean that Malta would have had some jury appeal if it made it through to the final? Who's to say? Sarah improved a lot after Malta's national final. The whole loo oo oop part was even revamped. It's definitely made Loop into one of the best Eurovision songs to have ever placed last in a semi. But also good job to Mats Bluksk for winning the televote in Malta's national final and placing second in it. Also very cool of him to be the spokesperson for Malta's jury points and being the only spokesperson to actually do something funny. That's really appreciated because for some reason, all of the spokespeople this year were middle-aged women having a mid-off. Like, look at this!
What a fantastic show! I love you, Eurovision. All the songs tonight were amazing.
Thank you so much for this super splendid night full of music, lights, fashion, good energy.
Thank you for hosting an amazing and extraordinary show. This is really impressive.
Thank you so much.
I'm so happy to see all of you having such a great time in Malta.
We definitely are.
In 15th place is Albania, with Besa singing Titan. So Albania sometimes does this thing where the national final performance has to be done in Albanian, but they release a revamped version of the song in English for Eurovision itself for more broad appeal. And Titan is one of those. Originally it was sung in Albanian. And I don't think changing it was the best idea. Like, songs about being resilient in the face of adversity are already pretty common. Making it so that Besa herself is a main great thing about this song. She's excellent at performing it, and she's an absolute goddess on stage with her vocals. But those lyrics really don't do it any favors, unfortunately. It lost a lot of its flair with the transition to English, and some of the magic of the Albanian version couldn't be captured as well by the English version, making it feel a little flat. But what I will admit is that I'm a big fan when Eurovision songs mash up different genres. Titan had a rap section in its first half and it's awesome. I wish that they leaned more into that. This is definitely not the only time that Eurovision songs this year mashed up different genres. It's just that a lot of them simply placed much higher, so I don't think I'm alone when saying that I'd love to see more of this. Big fan of this rotating camera shot as well, but I think my favorite camera shot is at the end of the performance, when the camera swaps over to this old man wearing cat ears. I think he should rise on stage next. Similarly to Malta, Albania's points are also quite concentrated. Greece and Italy are close neighbors of Albania, ignoring the Adriatic, and those two have always awarded a lot of points to Albania over the years. San Marino again shows off that the song could have had some jury success if it qualified, perhaps due to Besa's amazing vocal performance. Switzerland has a large Albanian diaspora, but most of them actually came from Kosovo. Speaking of Kosovo, it looks like their votes weren't enough to get Albania some points from the rest of the world vote. It might be because the song wasn't in Albanian, so Kosovars were less interested in voting for it. Albania's national final is pretty interesting. The jury is the one who chooses the winner of the contest itself. However, it's the televote that decides which performance actually gets sent to Eurovision. And while Besa didn't win the jury vote, she did win the televote. So good job to Malred Kosri for winning the jury vote. In 14th is San Marino with Megara singing 11:11. First and foremost, I have to fanboy a bit over the band Megara. They tried to represent Spain in 2023, but placed 4th in their national final. They wanted to try again this year, but weren't even selected to compete. So they said, screw it, let's just try in San Marino instead. And that worked. And they made sure to include lyrics which swear at the people who thought they weren't good enough. Legendary. I find it funny how the 2 songs with swear words or slurs this year were both sung in Spanish. The rest of us are cowards, truly. Germany was too afraid to do it, so I guess we needed compensation anyway. Megara is also not a band that you can place in a specific music genre. The one point in the song in which they say they like rock, they start doing flamenco. Also legendary. But what's 11:11 actually about? I don't know. It's that one time in which you're obligated to touch the floor or something. Okay, it's actually used to symbolize personal growth, but the first explanation is funnier. The main problem is that whenever I watch the semi-final performance, I feel dread knowing what's to come. Yeah, something went wrong here, and I remember audibly gasping when it happened live. It feels awful. It sucks to slip up when it actually matters after having practiced to perfection for so long. I don't think we'll ever know what exactly happened, but here are some theories. It could be that there was something wrong with Kenzie's earpiece, since she fiddled with it a little after the slip-up. The music was also quite loud, so there's a chance that she couldn't hear herself sing, and so her timing was off. It's also just likely that she was exhausted from all the rehearsals, seeing as her vocals were a bit worse than usual. Jumping around the stage would only exacerbate that. But to bring things back to the positives, the staging is amazing. I don't know what I should specifically say about it because I have no idea what the style is called, but it slaps, that's all that matters. San Marino obtained 16 points. Wow. Spain gave 3/4 of that amount because the song is in Spanish, Megara is a Spanish band, and they participated in Spain's national final before. You really lucked out with Spain's placement in the second semi. The rest of the world is likely here because of Spanish-speaking America, and Italy because it's San Marino, of course. Georgia's 3 points is peculiar, however. Let Extra know what you think about that. San Marino's national final has like a million songs because it's somehow economically beneficial. In any case, well done to Loredana Berti for placing second with Pazza. She also placed 7th in Italy's national final before competing for San Marino. But listen, San Marino, we need to have a talk. Why the hell did you allow artists to submit AI-generated songs? Never, ever, 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 ever do that again. I hate AI. In 13th is Belgium, with Musti singing Before the Party's Over. Yeah, it's fine, don't worry about it. Hi, yes, if you're new here, I'm Belgian. And I gotta say, I understand why we didn't qualify. We were not cooking with this one. Because I'm Belgian, I'm gonna be a bit more critical of this performance, but I don't mean to upset Musti himself. He's cool, and he clearly shows that he is an amazing performer in the music video of this song. If you were disappointed with Belgium's semi-final performance, then I urge you to watch the music video instead. The main issue is that Belgium wasn't able to transfer the energy from the music video over to the stage. There is such a thing as vibes, and the audience will notice if the vibes are off, even if it's subconsciously. The performance is supposed to be moody and atmospheric. It's not a very happy song. It builds tension and makes you nervous. And the music video does a job with flying colors. Then, looking at the live performance, Musti is very jolly and moves around a lot. He's smiling from ear to ear and is clearly happy to be there. And hey, we love a little bit of jolliness around these parts. But during a performance that's supposed to be edgy and moody, that's a slippery slope. Some other complaints are Musti singing out of tune for a while, the lyrics at the end being a bit repetitive, and Musti's overconfidence during the pre-party rehearsals, probably due to being so high in the betting odds. Another big problem that people often cite is the staging. All it had was a bunch of microphones, which feels a little awkward when Musti can't actually use any of them, or at least pretend to. And at the end they made him sway back and forth like a rock star, which is like, come on, now we're playing it a bit too cool here. Again, this is nothing against Musti. He just wanted to have fun at Eurovision, and he definitely did. He made some moves tonight. But in the end, this result is not surprising. I'm mostly just saying things that other people have covered to death already. I've also seen some people say that the poor staging is a common problem for the Walloon broadcaster, which is why Gustav did so well last year, cause that performance was made by the Flemish broadcaster. To make sure we're on the same page, Belgium has 2 broadcasters you could compare to other countries' national broadcasters. There's VRT for Flanders and RTBF for Wallonia. Every year they swap Eurovision duties with each other, so last year it was VRT's turn, and this year it was RTBF's turn. I personally don't want to accept the RTBF is less good at staging than VRT theory. Since I live in the north, I've heard the argument that Wallonia is always to blame whenever something goes wrong so many times throughout my life, especially given the recent elections, and it's so annoying. I get that this argument is coming from a different place than the Flemish political climate, but it does bother me a little. Hope you understand what I mean. In any case, you can reasonably ignore all of the aforementioned problems and still really enjoy this performance. It's still pretty good, of course. Anyways, Belgium gained 18 points. France and the Netherlands make sense as they're Belgium's neighbors and they often vote for each other. The other 5 aren't countries that are particularly in a voting bloc with Belgium, but since the song itself is quite good, it's understandable that it would still eke out a small amount of points from some countries. Say, now that I think about it, I've never asked what your nationality is. I don't believe you. I haven't seen you make a sandcastle once. Why don't you prove it? In 12th is Denmark with Saba singing Sand. Something I want to mention is that despite my Eurovision obsession during Eurovision week, I don't actually keep up to date with any Eurovision news before that week. So the first time I even heard all of these songs was in this video, a quick roundup of all of the rehearsals right before the week began. And only after that would I check out the music videos. And I vividly remember Saba shouting "Sand" at the top of her lungs and me getting jump scared so much that I flew out of my seat. And you'd think that experience would scar me. But no, I am a masochist. I love this song now. Look, every single year, everyone always has that one song that they think should have qualified easily. Everyone gets one robbed pass, and I'm cashing mine in right now. So Sand is a power ballad about a breakup, and about the nostalgia from the relationship. I know that all of the sound effects in the performance are basic as hell, but I genuinely think it looks really cool. I like it when it looks like the artist is the one making the effects happen. I'll talk about that again later with Cyprus. I also like it because it reminds me of Sand Kirby. I like Kirby, he make it a sandcastle, it's so cute. So why didn't it qualify? Probably because she's just standing on a box. Saba's vocals are amazingly good, and for the sound effects to work it requires her to just stand in the same location. With Cyprus the effects mostly happened on the floor, so a top view camera could capture the whole stage even if the artist moved. But in Denmark's case the effects mostly happened on the back wall, which is a lot farther away from where Saba is standing, making it difficult for her to move and making the camera angles kinda the same the whole time. Looks like the qualification slipped out of her hands. It is what it is. Doesn't stop me from being a big fan of it though. This performance has some of my favorite shots of the whole shebang this year. Denmark got 36 points. Looks like this is another song that might have done well with the jury if it qualified, as we can see with San Marino's high amount of points. Norway is of course a neighbor and very culturally close to Denmark. So are Estonia and Latvia to a slightly lesser degree. Extra gave his symbolic singular vote to this, but Belgium did not give any points. Sucks to be him. It was worth it, okay? Anyways, Saba won the jury vote of the Danish national final, but good job to Basim for winning the televote with his song Johnny. And finally, in 11th is Czechia, with Aiko singing Pedestal. I think in this segment it's important to highlight that, while Aiko may not have qualified, she won at practically everything else. She was written off very quickly after her performance in Czechia's national final, which was... But she improved her vocals so much between the national final and the semi-final. The difference is like night and day. It's such a huge glow up, and it's so wonderful to see something like that. Besides that, she also collabed with another Eurovision artist for her song Hunger. That artist is Thea, who you'll remember is one half of the musical duo who sung that one song that goes like bo 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 bo. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, go listen to both of those later, they ate. And best of all, she got a girlfriend. Yeah, Kat Almagro, one of the members of the band Megara, who represented San Marino this year, and Aiko are now dating. Seriously, you don't need to qualify in order to win Eurovision. Aiko proves it. So about Pedestal itself, it's a song about learning to love yourself after a breakup. The staging was really interesting. Trapping your artists and backup dancers in the overhead LED cubes is a very creative use of the stage. So why didn't it qualify? Some minor mistakes were maybe that the couple argument kinda interrupts the flow, the staging is a bit too dark, and the camera shots could have been better. And most importantly, where's the pedestal? Like yeah, the use of the overhead cubes was really good, but there wasn't anything else going on stage besides that, so yeah, there's room for improvement there. But most of all, I think Aiko just got a bit unlucky. Like I said, this semi is stacked, and there were going to be some heartbreaks no matter what. Thankfully for Aiko, her luck was used elsewhere, considering all of the other stuff she pulled off that I talked about. Whatever the case, she's iconic. Oh my god, she called her album that, queen. Czechia got 38 points, and it's our first example of a song that didn't rely on just a couple countries to give a lot of points. And it's quite impressive for a song that didn't qualify to gain points from almost all of the countries it could have gotten points from. You can imagine that feminists across Europe would vote for this no matter which country they were from. Standouts here are San Marino, so again, perhaps it would have had some jury appeal, and also Austria, due to them being neighbors with Czechia. The Czech national final has an international vote, which Aiko completely dominated. But good job to Ellie, with her song The Angel's Share for winning the Czech vote and coming in second. The second semi. I look back at it quite fondly, because like I said, all of the acts were incredible, and interval acts like We Just Love Eurovision Too Much were really fun. But most of all, I liked it for one major reason. It was the last thing I saw before I went to sleep and woke up in the morning to see that all of the shit had hit the fan. We're heading into the deep end now. Strap in. The grand final was held on the 11th of May. It opened with Björn Skifs performing Hooked on a Feeling. Björn competed in both the 1978 and 1981 contests for Sweden, but Hooked on a Feeling wasn't sung at either. It was important culturally back when bell-bottoms were in style. That's all you need to know. More importantly for my audience than the elderly though, here's the flag parade. Welcome back to the flag parade, where we put the rad in parade. You know, I guess the word rad is another thing that was only important culturally back when bell-bottoms were in style. You know what it is. Every single artist flaunts the flag of their country on the stage. But it's inevitable that some get a little quirky with it, so let's go over those. Ollie Alexander bought the flag of the UK, but big. Cool. Angelina Mango's black dress alongside the Italian flag might be a subtle hint at her support for Palestine, since those are the colors of its flag. As usual, we'll talk more about that later. And as for one artist whose intentions aren't subtle in the slightest, Nemo brought the non-binary flag on stage, featuring it even more prominently than the Swiss flag. Now, that doesn't seem that shocking on the surface, but you gotta understand that there was a very strict policy on which items visitors could bring into the arena. Restrictions have always been in place, but with all of the protesters outside, the restrictions were tighter than ever. That's why the only flags you could bring were the official national flags of the participating countries, or rainbow flags. The non-binary flag is a pride flag, but it's not a rainbow flag. At least I think that's what the EBU is saying. And so visitors were not allowed to bring it in. Nemo was told that they weren't allowed to bring the non-binary flag to the flag parade, and so they just smuggled it in. And at that point, there wasn't much that the EBU could do about it, except just let it slide. I'm gonna talk a bit more about the EBU's terrible flag policy later as well, cause this wasn't the only controversy caused by it. After half of the artists performed, Linda Woodruff returned for what can only be described as a musical fillet show for Martin Österdahl. Wow, this has got to be the most poorly timed and tone-deaf segment I've ever seen. So, since all of the EBU's horrendous decisions had to go through Martin at some point, as he was the executive supervisor, he naturally became target number 1 to take down. Nothing I can say here could even come close to accurately describing how angry people were at him. Just listen to what's happening when he needs to say his catchphrase before revealing the votes.
Tell us about the result.
Yeah, good evening. So the moment of truth has arrived. And I can tell you that we've checked and verified all of the results, and we're ready to start revealing the results of the grand final result.
Huh? We've checked and verified all of the results, and we're ready to start revealing the results of the grand final results. He's getting booed so much he can't even speak properly. I'm honestly shocked that this segment was still allowed to be shown. Like, they could have easily replaced it with the host just interviewing some artists in the green room. I really hope no one actually listens to this. But if you do, whatever, I guess. I won't king shame. But enough of that, let's see if the interval acts were any better. Well, it looks like we've got a performance from the one and only ABBA Alcazar. Okay, fine, this fake out was pretty funny, I'll admit, and Alcazar is a good band. I may be young, but even I know what crying at the discotheque is. They're celebrating another Swedish band. Again, you might as well. But I must say that what happened next left a poor taste in my mouth regardless.
Yes, we can. Hello, Malmö.
Oh.
And hello, Eurovision.
It's Björn, Benny, Agneta, Frida, it's ABBA!
No, they aren't. Dude, this sucks. Like, this scene had to go through like an executive board, where multiple old white men in suits had to each individually approve of this being put into a show broadcasted to millions of viewers. So this is what's known as the ABBA Voyage, a virtual concert created by ABBA so that they don't have to do concerts themselves, and instead their virtual avatars can do it for them. If you think this looks good, then that's fine. Everyone is entitled to their own wrong opinion. I think this looks incredibly weird and stupid and awful and I hate it. See, we can all have many different perspectives on things. Okay, so it's incredibly obvious ever since Halloween won last year that Sweden was going to celebrate ABBA. It's exactly 50 years after the Swedish band won the 1974 contest with Waterloo, and then subsequently became one of the most popular music groups of all time. And the hosts had been teasing it the whole time with several references to ABBA. And like, yeah, I understand that they weren't going to reunite ABBA. That's an impossibility at this point. But then why pretend like it? I wish this whole segment was completely cut out and just went directly into the Waterloo tribute. I mean, hey, you wanna make the show shorter, EBU? Well, there you go. Anyways, the Waterloo tribute was good. I mean, of course it was. It's the last interval act. They're not gonna allow it to be bad. It was performed by Carola, who won for Sweden in 1991 with this song I can't pronounce. Charlotte Pirelli, who... okay, no, we've already seen you twice, we get it. And Conchita Wurst, who won for Austria in 2014. I love Conchita just as much as the next person, but I do find it kinda strange that he's the one they brought on. Måns Zelmerlöw is the only Swedish winner who straight up wasn't featured at all, and this does feel like a good place to put him. But whatever, it's Conchita Wurst, I am not complaining in the slightest. But hey, I said that all but one Swedish winner made an appearance in the contest, but we're missing another one, aren't we? For the last interval act, Louine returned after only a year, performing her new single Forever alongside Tattoo, with which she won the contest last year. And all I can say is, are her abs made of iron? This performance is practically a workout session, and she was able to keep her voice stable throughout it all. I don't even care about the song that much, but this is damn impressive. Guess she's just proving even more why she's the GOAT. Now then, with that out of the way, let's get into the very long stretch of grand final performances. There's no turning back now. In 10th in the second semi and 25th in the final is Norway, with Golte singing Ulveham. I'm gonna have to introduce a concept that I want to use going forward, to make sure we're all on the same page. This is the Eurovision bubble. It consists of people who are superfans of Eurovision. They watch all the national finals, they keep up to date with any news surrounding the artists, and maybe they're even present at the pre-parties or in the arena. Alongside it, you've got the much larger general audience. It consists of people who see all of the performances for the first time ever during the grand final, and maybe they even tuned in on a whim. But even though the Eurovision bubble is way smaller than the general audience, it's still the loud minority, and you'll see their opinions the most if you're looking online, like on Reddit or YouTube. Makes sense, they're the most interested after all. But these two groups have very different music tastes. The general audience is more into songs that don't stray too far from the norm, while the Eurovision bubble likes experimental stuff. You could see that dichotomy with Pedestal, for example. The Eurovision bubble loved it, but because their votes weigh a lot less than the general public, it didn't qualify. But nowhere was that dichotomy as visible this year as with Norway. Golte placing last shocked everyone. So many people in the Eurovision bubble had this somewhere in their top 10. Ulveham is one of the more ambitious songs at this year's contest. It's a rendition of a medieval Norwegian ballad in which a maiden is transformed into a wolf by her stepmother, and can only become human again by drinking her brother's blood. By drinking her stepmother's blood instead, which contains the blood of the maiden's unborn half-brother, she becomes free on her own terms. It also opens with a traditional Norwegian herding call to call livestock. And the song itself is appropriately intense, and the vocals of Gunhild Sundli are dang hypnotic. The Eurovision bubble ate this up. But the general public, not quite. The risk of sending such an alternative song to the contest is that you'll lose broad appeal. It's what happened to Eya Eya last year as well. People did not like how the vocals sounded for either of them. Something else that Aiko and Gotte have in common is that while they may not have done well at Eurovision, people who really like their styles of music have now found them, and they can quench their thirst for those music styles by listening to those artists' other songs. So even with Ulveham getting last, there is clearly an audience that is happy to listen to this, and I'm really glad to see Gotte taking the loss in stride. Now that we're looking at performances that actually qualified, the points will be distributed a lot more across several different countries in the semis, so some of these smaller amounts don't really need to be discussed as much. In Semi 2, Norway got 43 points. Denmark and Norway are clearly showing off their voting bloc, and again Estonia and Latvia are also culturally close. San Marino is here again, but despite that, Norway did not get many points from the jury in the grand final. In the final, Norway got 16 points. 12 of those points came from the jury. Finland and Lithuania are again culturally close, but Albania's 6 is surprising. 3 of their jurors were big fans it seems. We don't know exactly which 3 of these 5 jurors they are, but it could be that they simply liked the alternative style. The televote only gave the other 4 points in the final. Finland is there again, and Ukraine gave 3. Another noteworthy thing about Norway is that a possible reason why they received so little points is not because they were considered bad by most, but because they consistently were barely not in the top 10. Only the top 10 get points, and the other 11 to 25 all get a 0, which you could see as not being very fair to those countries who actually came pretty close to being in the top 10. One of those countries is Norway. This scoreboard was made by Reddit user Sueskind and simulates the results of the contest if places 11 to 25 also got points. 25 points if they placed first, 1 point if they placed last, and every country in between gets a score between those two scores. As you can see with this system, Norway jumped up 5 spots with the jury, 4 with the televote, and 5 overall. This means that Norway often plays right outside of the top 10, which is where all of those zeros came from. But with this system, they gain points from placing 11th, 12th, and so on. This puts Norway's last place a bit more into perspective, and shows that it wasn't considered to be the worst performance at all. See, now this is why I have you to do the math around here. Golte won the televote in Norway's national final, but good job to the band Kano and their song Dam Digida for winning the jury vote. In 9th in the second semi and 24th in the final is Austria, with Kalin singing We Will Rave. Oh my god, it's crazy, it's party. Bringing a 90s Eurodance track to Eurovision is a ballsy move, but I absolutely love that it's here. Look, I was practically molded by the late 2000s, early 2010s internet culture, and this song just makes me feel like I'm listening to Caramel Dansen. If I compare your song to Caramel Dansen, please understand that that is the highest form of praise I can bestow upon you. I was looking at the OG Caramel Dansen video while writing this, and I saw that it was uploaded on YouTube 17 years ago. Well, time to start writing my testament. Kalin herself is also kind of a Eurovision insider. She's been a stand-in singer, she choreographed and danced in some of the 2018 interval acts, was a creative director for some performances in 2021 and 2022, and helped creating stage performances in 2023. She knows what she's doing, even if she won't let it show with her placement. Sorry, tough competition this year. We Will Rave is a song about escapism, going to a rave to forget about all of your problems. Kalin is great at transferring her energy over to the crowd, and I particularly like this one way of doing it that she uses, which I like to call the squeal. I think they add a lot to making these songs feel special. You know, it gives me the feeling that I'm not just looking at a bot performing. It feels so human, if that makes sense. Alright, let's ask that classic question. Why did it place so low? So this song relies a lot on its dancing. We're at a rave after all. And while that's already probably not enough to wow the crowd, vocals are usually deemed more important. What's even worse is that the video feed cut off right when her most important dance break began, and only came back after it was already over. Wow, I don't know why Kalin deserved this kind of karmic justice. You hate to see it. And of course, the music genre being a little outdated, and there being so many other girl bops in the final, makes it a little bit difficult to vote for it in the place of any other performance. And you can also see that in the voting. Austria got 46 points in the second semi, with a large majority of those being incredibly spread out among the lower amounts. Meanwhile, the televote in the final only gave Austria a measly 5 points. There were just too many more songs that could compete with this in the final. The jury gave 19 for a total of 24. There were 3 Italian jurors who voted it really high, and 2 Spanish ones who did the same. Perhaps they were born at the right time to be very nostalgic of 90s music. Before ending off, I would like to mention that since this performance relied a lot on its dance moves, you can always watch the official music video if you would like to hear better vocals. Personally, I don't care much about that, but I prefer the music video anyway because it has hot, oiled up naked men. Oh yeah, more of that please. In 9th in the first semi and 23rd in the final is Slovenia, with Raven singing Veronica. Okay, so you're telling me that not only are 3 of those words correct, there's also Yuri, and this isn't even the last act to use white skin colored clothing to make the dancers or artists look nude. Man, I love Eurovision, where's this been all my life? Anyways, Veronica is a song about women not being given any agency, and empowering themselves despite that. Similarly to Ulvaham, it's a song that takes inspiration from some kind of national story. In this case, it's about a countess with the same name who was tried for witchcraft in 1425 by her father-in-law, because he didn't approve of her marrying his son. Even though it failed due to a lack of evidence, he had her drown anyway. Okay, so can I quickly say, never listen to the odds. Slovenia had the lowest chance of qualifying out of every performance in the first semi that did qualify. But come on, Were you seriously expecting this not to qualify? This is Eurovision we're talking about. The girls and the gays eat this stuff up. Raven herself has also come close to participating many times by placing high in some Slovenian national finals. She got second in 2016, third in 2017, and second again in 2019. Nah, she knows what she's doing. I don't know if there have been any other performances at Eurovision where the artist is crawling on the floor, but there better be more going forward. It intensifies the emotional impact and tension of the whole thing. I swear, the headset microphone gang just keeps on winning, because they can improve their stage presence to such a degree. Last year, I was also so entranced by Slovenia's entry that I actually tried pronouncing the Slovenian words used in the song. And this year, it's the exact same. I like saying "Ja sam ti si Veronica." And speaking of last year's Slovenian entry, Raven and Bojan from Joker Out are friends. And Bojan is even one of the songwriters for Veronica. That's really cool. I wish more Eurovision artists from the same country gave support to each other like that. But don't worry, it's not the last time we'll see that. So why did it play so low? It's likely too niche for most people. And while the chorus is pretty good, the rest of the verses might not have hit as hard. And I mean, in the final it was also kind of stuck between a hydrogen bomb and another hydrogen bomb. So I can't really blame Slovenia for getting overshadowed here. Slovenia got 51 points in the first semi, and a large part of those came from their neighbors in Croatia and Serbia. They're in a voting bloc as they always have been, and all three of them were pretty lucky to have had each other in the same semi. 7 from the rest of the world is quite high for a country not usually associated with having a large diaspora, and for some reason they didn't even get any from the rest of the world in the final itself. Perhaps people from the rest of the world who actually vote in the semis are people who are big fans of Eurovision, and would be more likely to vote for something alternative. Meanwhile, the general public was more present for the final. Slovenia received 27 points in the final, 12 from the public and 15 from the jury. Surprisingly, the support from Serbia dwindled, but it kind of makes sense seeing as there were so many more songs to vote for. But Croatia's support stayed exactly the same for both the jury and the televote. Raven performed Veronica at the Croatian national final, so the public was already very acquainted with her song, so the televote not dwindling makes some sense. 4 of Croatia's juries ranked the performance in their top 3, and I think it's safe to say that the voting bloc between Slovenia and Croatia is just very strong. Also, there is one thing that I think was a missed opportunity in this performance. There wasn't nearly enough male nudity. In 22nd in the final is Spain with Nebulosa singing Zora, which thankfully satisfies my male nudity quota. Nebulosa consists of singer Mary Bus and keyboardist Marta Sousa. Oh, it's keyboardist, not keyboarder, dang. We were bound to hit one of the big 5 eventually, but it's a nice change of pace to only come across one after already having discussed 3 entries. Usually we would have already stumbled across the UK or Germany by this point. So Zora is a song about female empowerment. And like I said when talking about San Marino, it's the other song this year that swears. While Zora literally translates to a female fox, in practice it translates more to a word that I don't want to say on YouTube. Psych, no, we're not doing this again, it means bitch. So some people say that mom's vocals are a bit weak, and yeah, for being 55 years old, that's understandable, but her stage presence and charisma is the best of the whole contest, and it isn't even close. No one else can make a crowd of 15,000 people shout, "I'm a bigger bitch" in unison at the drop of a hat. She can just do that. Her AoE is huge. That's a gaming joke. Please don't bully me. When I listened to the rehearsal roundup again, I heard her actually sing that line. And it felt wrong. Like, no, that's the crowd's job. With the amount and with the intensity of the crowd singing Zora, it almost makes the crowd seem like backing vocals. It's genuinely insane. And like, it makes so much sense for someone who is depicted as a literal dominatrix to be able to control the crowd like this. I could probably never listen to this song outside of Eurovision, not because the song is bad, but because the crowd is that essential special ingredient to the sauce. It's a symbiosis between the artist and the audience taken to its absolute limits. It's difficult to convey it with words. It's something you need to hear for yourself to believe. And then I haven't even gotten into the hot naked men yet. So with such crowd control, you'd expect this performance to place a lot higher than 22nd, huh? I'd say this was another big difference in opinion between the Eurovision bubble and the general public. Like yeah, the Eurovision bubble was going insane, but the general public was probably like, oh no, grandma is off the hook again, gotta get her back into the hospital before she collapses. I also think the camera work did the performance a little dirty. Like at one point you can hear the crowd going nuts while the camera is just focused on mom walking. But they're actually going crazy because the men took their clothes off. I think it would have been a lot better to focus on that. Spain received 30 points. 11 came from the televote and includes some Romance neighbors like Portugal, France and Italy. Finland and Ireland are also there. Also, here's a map of the percentage of the population over 65 in European countries in 2020. You know, just for fun, no specific reason. The jury gave the other 19 points, and once again includes Finland and Italy. Some of those Italian jurors are quite old, but you can probably say that for a lot of other jurors. So let's just chalk it up to voting blocks. Same with San Marino. Austria's jurors are also mostly young after all, and also Austria and Spain usually aren't considered to be in a voting bloc. I'm willing to chalk it up to a coincidence regarding which jurors were in power, especially since the Austrian public didn't give them any points. And good work to Santo Pedro for placing second in Spain's national final with Dos Extraños. In 8th in the second semi and 21st in the final is Georgia, with Nutsa Bizeladze singing Firefighter. Okay, so I gotta say, I wasn't really wowed by this one right away. I thought, okay, the staging is just Rise Like a Phoenix again, and the song itself is about, the world is on fire, gotta stop that. But you have to look beyond that and consider the situation Georgia has been in. The last time Georgia qualified for the finals was 2016. They had one of the longest non-qualification streaks in Eurovision. It makes perfect sense for Georgia to go with something more radio-friendly in order to get mass appeal, because qualifying was the highest priority for them, and Nutsa knew that. She's not here to win the contest, she's here to take a mid-song and elevate it to the highest heights by making her own energy the focal point. The staging and the song may not have been given that much attention, but that's fine. What matters is that Nutsa brings it all to life by dancing and jumping around all over the place. It's kinda like the opposite of Spain in a way. They had control over the crowd by being calm and charismatic. Georgia, on the other hand, had control over the crowd by being intense and lively. I'm gonna be praising some other artists for moving around a lot, making themselves exhausted, and still keeping their vocals on point, and Nutsa is one of those who deserves that praise. And as soon as I realized all of that, I stopped caring about the stuff that holds this performance back. I surrender to the sheer energy exuding from it. Oh yeah, it's getting harder to breathe. This qualification was absolutely deserved. I'm so happy for you, Georgia. Look at Nutsa's reaction when she only gets 19 points from the public in the grand final. Thumbs up. She doesn't mind. She qualified, and that's a huge victory. Many of Georgia's 45 points in the second semi came from Armenia and Albania. Armenia isn't surprising at all. They're neighbors and vote for each other all the time. Albania is usually not a country you see supporting Georgia though, but it's not that hard to figure out why they did this time. Not only did Nutsa grow up in Turkey, which has traditionally had friendly relations with Albania, Nutsa also won a song contest in Albania in 2021, so many viewers must have recognized her. France and Greece are usually more supportive towards Armenia than Georgia, but maybe some of that support rubbed off on Georgia as well. In the final, Georgia got 34 points, 19 from the televote, with Armenia and Azerbaijan again not being very surprising due to them being neighbors, and Italy's televote actually kept steady between the semi and the final. I'm not sure why that is exactly. The other 15 points from the jury once again came from Azerbaijan and Armenia for the most part. Nothing shocking. Alright, awesome. I don't have a segue for this, so Estonia. In 6th in the second semi and 20th in the final is Estonia, with Viis Minust teaming up with Pulup to sing Nendes narkotikumidest eitea me kulmidagi. Viis Minust was already a very popular band in Estonia, while Pulup was more niche, known for using the talharpa, an old Estonian instrument. But what they do have in common is not adhering to a specific genre, and instead just wanting to get parties started. It's weird to see a performance that plays pretty high in its semi to be all the way down here in the final, but yeah, you can blame the jury for that one. But whatever, who cares about the jury? Sometimes all you need is 6 dudes singing about getting raided by the police because they think they own drugs, which contains a deeper narrative about the police perceiving people who look poor as automatically dangerous and are likely to be in possession of drugs, which is something that rich people don't have to worry about. You know, just guy things. So the song is an absolute masterpiece and I have absolutely zero complaints. And then we get to the staging. Wait, where is it? From what I've seen, since Estonia has such a small population, it's difficult for them to fund the staging of their artists, and it shows during this performance. But I have to acknowledge that Viis Minust and Pulup filled up the empty space so well. They've got the old instrument, an iconic dance, a semi-fight scene, and even this. Yeah, no, who needs staging when you can make the audience your staging? Genius! There are so many little things jam-packed into what would have been very bare-bones staging, that I personally think it makes up for it. But considering their low placement, it was surely still a little lacking for people, which I understand. Estonia got 79 points in the second semi, with Latvia giving the highest amount, which is as usual obvious as they're both part of the Baltic trio. Some top 5 finishes came from Austria, the Netherlands, Czechia, and the rest of the world vote. None of those I would consider being in a voting block with Estonia, but maybe they're all just into party songs. Comparing Estonia's semi-final score with that of the Netherlands, another kind of party song, Austria gave 12, while Czechia and the rest of the world gave 10. It's nothing concrete since the Netherlands is going to be popular everywhere anyway, but it's something to consider. They got 37 points in the final. And like Extra hinted earlier, barely anything came from the jury due to a lack of staging and inferior vocal performance. The public obviously likes party music though, so they gave the majority 34 points. Latvia is here once again with the 12-pointer, and now that Finland, who is linguistically close, and Lithuania, the third member of the Baltic trio, can both vote for Estonia, they indeed did. Croatia and Ukraine are probably just coincidences, but Ukraine at least is also part of a post-Soviet bloc, and Croatia's song has a similar intensity. As you can imagine, Nendes was a televote juggernaut in Estonia's national final, but props to Ali with the song My Friend for doing well in the jury vote and coming second. Alright, well, that was a nice break. Now back to male nudity. In 7th place in the first semi and 19th place in the final is Finland, with Windows 95 Man alongside Henri Pispanen singing No Rules. Last year, Finland became famous at Eurovision for being the public's favorite with Kärja singing Cha Cha Cha, mesmerizing everyone with its craziness and party-ness. And Finland thought, okay, let's just do that again, but sacrifice points to be even more silly. It's difficult to witness this song as a mere mortal. Its glory and grandeur amidst blinding light that reflects off of Timo Keisteri's shimmering buttocks right into mine fucking eyes. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you, Finland. Very cool. The camera work in this performance is superb, and I think it might be one of my favorites of this whole year. The gag of Timo hiding his crotch from view behind various objects and people is not only funny, but is such a genius use of the stage itself, and requires a lot of thought being put into the choreography. Yes, thought. Make no mistake, while it probably still is more of a joke entry, that's not all it is, because it still has meaning. Many people compare it to Eurovision entries in the 2000s, which were made to be flamboyant, because the winner was only chosen by the televote at the time. But I think that comparison is unfair. The song has meaning. It's Timo's life philosophy. While those 2000 songs aren't meant to be taken seriously, Timo is trying to specifically tell you to not take things too seriously. I know that sounds minor, but there's a difference there. It's more empowering and promotes the fact that you can be yourself. For example, I don't know if anyone else noticed this, but Timo is coming out of an egg here. This has to represent trans people. Please tell me I'm not scoping. And also proper credit to Henry for his vocals. I don't think there was another male artist this year who hit such high notes, so hearing those from him is like a breath of fresh air. Also, he is dripped out, holy moly. Speaking of drip, I think the combination of a blurred out shirt with a Windows 95 logo and a pair of jeans shorts is the best outfit of any artist this year. Everyone else go home, peak has already been reached. Finland got 59 points in the first semi. Sweden, Iceland and Lithuania are with them in the Nordic bloc. Ukraine also tends to give Finland a fair amount of points. Maybe that's what being neighbors with Russia does to a country. In the final, Finland got 38 points. This song has a similar vibe to Estonia, so it makes sense to see both of them at the bottom of the jury scores. They got 7 points from the jury, 4 from San Marino and 3 from Australia. Since Australia is also present in the televote, I get the feeling that Australia just likes more distinct entries like this and Ireland, for example. Couldn't tell you what's up with San Marino though. In the other 31 points from the public, we can once again see a lot of Nordics, Australia and Ukraine again. Now that Estonia can vote for them as well, they of course did, due to them being close geographically and linguistically. Some people are surprised that Finland didn't receive even more televotes than it did, and there could be a couple reasons for that. Most notably, a lot of televotes were concentrated at the top, so there were only some scraps left for Finland to pick up. Windows 95 Man obviously smashed the televote in Finland's national final, but good job to Sarah Sipula for winning the jury vote and placing second with Paskana. That was a pretty popular one, and I get why. I once again like it more than some entries that actually made it through this year. In 18th place in the final is the United Kingdom, with Ollie Alexander singing Dizzy. Listen, dude, I was joking about the male nudity thing. That was a joke. How is this an actual trend in this year's contest? And why are they all so low? Put them higher. Something important to note about Ollie is that he was already an established artist before entering Eurovision. That was part of the UK strategy to do better this time, since last year they didn't do so hot. And another part of their strategy was making one of the most ambitious stagings in Eurovision ever. Looking back at it, I still don't know how they did some of these effects, and I still don't know which way is right side up. But what I do know is that these backup dancers had to be ripped as hell to not fall over constantly. Whichever angle I tried to look at it from, all of them went through some kind of physical exertion, and then they still had to dance after that. Huge respect to them. I just collapsed after doing like 10 push-ups. So with all of that going for them, let's see how the UK did.
0 points.
The only 0 points of the whole night went to the UK. Not gonna lie, that's pretty fitting. Of course, I don't think any performance deserved to get 0 points. They're all worth something. But at the same time, I don't think it's hard to figure out why the UK of all countries got it once again. Dizzy's 0 points from the public probably came from an awkward marriage between the song and the staging. Yes, the UK brought their A game regarding the artist, and yes, the UK also brought their A game regarding the staging. Both of them are good, but do they fit each other? I mean, I like Say Gex as much as the next guy, but if you want it to work, then the song had to be a lot more edgy and not pop. Just having the guys be edgy, isn't enough. People who only like pop won't vote for this, and people who only like the staging won't vote for this either. If you're gonna break the line, then commit to it. But cheer up, the UK still got a lot of points from the jury, so 18th is still a pretty good score overall. If you want a little more, then, I don't know, try sending a song in Scottish or Welsh or something. That'd be hype. Not much to talk about since there aren't any semi-final points or televote points. As for the jury score, however, the UK got 46 points. With how Sweden has a tendency to make incredibly catchy pop songs, I'm not surprised that their jury ranked Dizzy pretty high, although I'm not sure about Iceland. Might be geographic proximity. Same goes for Belgium, who has a bit of a less noticeable voting bloc with the UK. Ireland and Australia are no-brainers for also being in the Anglosphere, and Portugal of course has that historic alliance with the UK. And what about Serbia? They also gave 4 points. Oh hey, you're right. In 10th place in the first semi and 17th place in the final is Serbia, with Teodora singing Ramonda. Being the last qualifier in your semi-final, and then almost making it to the left side of the leaderboard in the grand final is super impressive. I don't know if such a jump has happened before in Eurovision, but it makes a lot of sense why it was specifically this performance that did so. Because of the semi-final qualifiers being solely chosen by the televoters, it makes singing ballads at Eurovision a little bit risky, since the public usually doesn't vote for those, but the jury does. But Teodora still had a lot of other stuff going for her. First of all, there weren't that many female ballads. Portugal was one and Denmark in a way was another, but that didn't make it to the final anyway. With a roster so bloated with upbeat songs, Ramonda stands out among the crowd. Another reason is the thing I didn't mention when I was talking about the allocation. When most qualifiers are going to be televote magnets, the votes they receive are more split up. Meanwhile, not too many jury picks will go through because the jury has no say in the matter. That's why the jury picks that do go through, like Serbia, enjoy a lot of points in the final. And that's how Serbia was able to make up for its low score in the semi. Oh yeah, I guess we haven't actually talked about the performance itself. It's good, obviously. If you want to do minimalistic staging, then this is the way to do it. Just one rock is all you need, because Teodora brings the environment to life with her singing anyway. I admit that I wish the song was a little louder during the slow parts, but I also think that it might have been worth it in order to make the moments when she does sing loudly pop much more. And I think my usual YouTube audience would enjoy the symbolism too. The Ramonda is the national flower of Serbia, and it's a flower that can survive in harsh environments and can easily regrow after being dehydrated. Because of that, it was used by Serbians as a symbol for their struggle during the First World War, similarly to how poppies are used in the West. But the cool thing about Ramonda is that you don't have to interpret it in a patriotic way. It can also just represent surviving through hardships in general, and I think that's what makes Ramonda work so well for Eurovision specifically. It's not only well performed by Teodora herself and has a good message, but it also has that little bit of affinity to the country the artist is native to. If you're gonna do a ballad in the current Eurovision metagame, then I think this is an awesome way of doing it. Serbia got 47 points in the first semi, and obviously most of them came from Croatia and Slovenia. I already mentioned this voting block when discussing Slovenia. I'm not sure why so many countries score less in the 5-point slot though, but maybe their viewers simply like ballads more than the viewers of other countries. All 4 of them also gave points to Portugal after all. The rest of the world also put them higher than average. Serbia got 54 points in the grand final, the first time it's gone up so far. Croatia is still a big fan, and so is Slovenia, but a bit further down. Surprisingly, none of the countries in the semi-final televote remain, and there's only countries from the other semi. It's also why Serbia shouldn't be dismissed as a country that only qualified because of Croatia and Slovenia, because if it was in the other semi, countries like Switzerland and Austria would have given them a lot of points anyway. They're also a tiny bit in a block with Serbia. The jury gave 22 out of 54 points, which is a bit shocking since ballads are usually meant to attract the juries. Similarly to Finland only getting the scraps of the televotes, the jury votes were also quite concentrated at the top, so it could be that Serbia could also only pick up some scraps. Slovenia and Croatia are of course still here, but now we also have Armenia and Cyprus giving even more. Teodora won the jury vote in Serbia's national final, but good job to Breskvica and her song Gnezdo Orlovo for winning the televote and coming second. In 7th place in the second semi and 16th place in the final is Latvia. Huh? Okay, no, hold on, let me fact check that.
Latvia!
So I think it's safe to say that Latvia qualifying was the biggest shocker during the second semi-final. They had the lowest odds of doing so in the odds of EurovisionWorld.com, which is what most people are looking at for odds, I believe. And to have them not only qualify, but qualify by a comfortable margin and break Latvia's non-qualification streak since 2017 is absolutely bonkers. The legend who was able to pull it off is Dawn singing Hollow. So why was this song so underrated, and why was it able to rise up so high despite that? Well, with Serbia I talked about the lack of female ballads, and with Latvia something similar is going on. Latvia had the only male ballad in the second semi, maybe except for France, but people couldn't vote for France because they automatically qualified. And we already know that France got a lot of televotes in the final. I think it makes sense that performing a male ballad would make you stand out among the crowd, and also draw in votes from people who liked France's performance the best, because Latvia had the next closest thing. And Dance himself also pulled the performance off excellently, excellently. While the staging was pretty simple overall, his vocals were really good, as expected of a ballad. It's also because Dance is a very experienced singer. He even tried to get into Eurovision in 2010 and 2014, and he placed second in both national finals, and both times because of a tiebreaker for first place. And on top of all of that, Dance is also just a really sweet guy. He deserved it. Every Latvian cried rivers when he qualified. They might drown. I hope this qualification reinvigorates Latvia to keep pursuing Eurovision success. Also, this is unrelated, but everyone has been talking about how much they like Dance's bald head, and I have to agree. I laughed when I first saw his postcard because he's rubbing his hands together like a bald supervillain, and it's so funny. Dr. Doofenshmirtz looking ass. You know what? Allow me to temporarily interrupt your regularly scheduled programming so we can rank all of the postcards this year, specifically the slow motion parts. Because why not? Alright, from worst to best, they are UK, Ukraine, Luxembourg, Italy, Moldova, Poland, France, Norway, San Marino, Cyprus, Austria, Serbia, Czechia, Portugal, Albania, Greece, Belgium, Finland, Slovenia, Lithuania, Malta, Spain, Switzerland, Estonia, Denmark, Croatia, Armenia, Sweden, Georgia, Netherlands, Ireland, Australia, Germany, Azerbaijan, Iceland, Latvia. Peter. I'm not considering the rest of the postcards because the EBU probably had some budgeting issues, so they weren't able to advertise any landmarks this time. Instead, they probably told the artists to just film some TikToks on their own or something. Latvia got 72 points in the second semi. Estonia gave Latvia their 12 back that they gave to them, which once again makes sense because they're the Baltics. I don't really think the other countries stand out as potentially being in a voting block with Latvia though, besides maybe Denmark. I believe it's just that people from these countries like Dance's male ballad. Latvia got 64 points in the grand final, so unlike Serbia, the points did go down. Latvia now had to compete with the likes of Germany and especially France, both of which were also radio-friendly male ballads, so Latvia stopped standing out. 28 of those came from the public. Estonia lowered their amount of points quite a lot, which is kinda shocking, especially because they gave Switzerland less points than Latvia in the semi, but more in the grand final. I expect that people who watched the semis were more inclined to vote for Latvia because they're more likely to be in the Eurovision bubble, and wanted Latvia to go through. In the grand final, the general public was more so in power, but I'm not sure since this song seems like more of a general public vote. Still a good amount of points from Ireland and Ukraine though. Not sure about Ireland, but regarding Ukraine, Dance had adopted a dog from Kharkiv, so perhaps that's them saying thanks. The jury gave the other 36 points, which makes sense because the jury likes ballads more, and so we probably don't have to look much further into it. Luxembourg and Georgia gave the most points at 8. Dance smashed both the televote and jury vote in Latvia's national final. But good job to Vastelas for placing second in both with the song Kur. In 6th place in the first semi and 15th in the grand final is Cyprus, with Celia Kapsis singing Liar. If I had a nickel for every time Cyprus sent in someone who lives in Australia but has Greek roots, I would eat the nickels. So Liar is okay, I don't really want to sugarcoat it, so negative opinion incoming. Everyone close your eyes and cover your ears. I don't like the song. Okay, we're in the clear. You can come back now. Out of all of the conventional pop songs this year, this one is like the most conventionalist, poppiest song-iest. It's the most song ever. Like, listen to these lyrics. Waking up in the morning and I'm feeling like ooh la la. It's about to go down because I found out the truth la la. You can't just rhyme la la with la la. That's not even a real word. But I don't like being negative. Get that stuff out of my face. We're all about positivity and optimism and silliness over here on the Extra and Exile channel. I think this is one of the best stagings of the whole show so far. Celia is a really good dancer, that's more so her thing than singing is, and the staging of the performance perfectly capitalizes off of it. The water particles, or whatever they are, moving in the same direction where Celia's hands or shoes are moving is such a simple thing, but it looks so cool and dynamic. Seeing that as the first performance in the first semi after a year of not having consumed any Eurovision content made me realize, oh yeah, wait, Eurovision is sick as hell actually. They can just do that. And of course that also comes with the fact that Celia was still able to sing pretty well, despite those dance moves probably being very exhausting, and despite her being not much of a singer in the first place. It's seriously impressive how she was able to elevate this song that's, you know. Also yeah, I get it, she's 17, I don't really care. Look, I'm 19 and I'm over here posting videos on the internet. Who is really winning here? What do you mean her? But I will give her this, for someone so young, she was a lot more composed than Victor Venikos was last year, who was also young and incredibly nervous. That's not only praise for her, but also for the Cypriot delegation for making sure that she wasn't too stressed at any point while she was in Malmö. So TLDR, song sucks, but nothing but praise for Celia. Cyprus got 67 points in the first semi. 12 points came from both Azerbaijan and Moldova. While it's hard to directly link those two to Cyprus, keep in mind what Extra said about other girl bops like Malta and Austria. While they had to face off against each other in the second semi, Cyprus had the only girl bop in the first semi, besides maybe Luxembourg. That's a slight stretch. While Azerbaijan and Moldova might not necessarily care much about Cyprus, if the people there like girl bops and pop songs, then they're gonna vote for Cyprus anyway because there are no other options. That's why Moldova didn't give any points in the grand final. Although Azerbaijan did, so I guess maybe there is something more going on there. Anyways, Portugal, Australia and Slovenia also put Cyprus in their top 5s. Australia is obvious, Celia is Australian. Portugal and Slovenia are less so, and both did give televote points in the grand final also. So I guess they really liked it, I don't know. Cyprus got 78 points in the grand final. 44 came from the televote, and with Greece being able to vote for them now, of course they did. It's tradition at this point. And Azerbaijan, Slovenia and Australia are also still there. As for the jury, which gave 34 points, we once again see Greece and Australia, but now with the addition of Luxembourg. Same kind of song, I guess. Fun fact, while editing this video, I realized that the sound effect that plays when a country is introduced was taken from that too. Isn't that neat? Alright, let's move on. In 4th place in the first semi and 14th in the grand final is Lithuania, with Sylvester Belt singing Luktelk. There's always gotta be one every year, but this song is the one that's gonna get stuck in your head forever. You will bop to it whenever your independent brain desires. There is nothing you can do about it, and you will like it, despite not even knowing the lyrics because they're in Lithuanian. Of course, unless you yourself have learned Lithuanian. I don't know how you pulled that off, Sylvester, but God, I love you for it. So Luktelk is a song about existentialism and being stuck in daily routines. Leaving any jokes I could make aside, that's probably one of the most relatable themes of any of this year's songs for me personally. I really fuck with that. It's also about erectile dysfunction or something. Look, he's a bitewing, this kind of stuff is really important to him. You have to respect the culture. I also fuck with that. Or rather, I physically can't. I'm definitely not alone when I say that I'm absolutely in love with this song. It's another song that the Eurovision bubble goes pretty crazy over. The reason why is because it's the perfect combination of having a modern theme, modern instrumentation, while still making it feel distinctly Lithuanian. And for someone who felt very uncomfortable on stage at the time, we'll get into that later, he still sounds incredibly comfortable in his own voice. Everyone is in love with the Lithuanian language now, it's awesome. And the staging, while simple, looks pretty slick. It gives me the Portugal kind of vibe, which is making it very minimalistic but still pop. But it's not exactly the same. Lithuania was still able to carve out its own niche in the aesthetics. Oh my god, it's red and black. Is that a Persona reference? So in my opinion, the simplicity of this song is a big strength of it. It's not showy or grandiose, more so it remains mysterious. Of course it contains deeper themes to think about, but most of all, you're just supposed to bop your head to it and live in the moment. That's also what the song is asking you to do after all. So making it easy for English speakers to sing along is a genius move. Lithuania qualified from the first semi with 119 points. This is the first time we've seen a country who has gotten points from every single country in its semi-final. Ireland and the UK gave them their 12s, as there are large groups of Lithuanian diaspora in those two. As for who put Lithuania in their top 4, Ukraine and Poland are always going to be pretty high because of the Lublin triangle thing, while Finland and Iceland are there because of the close relations between the Baltics and Nordics. Then there's also Cyprus, Luxembourg and Germany, who I usually wouldn't consider to be in a voting bloc with Lithuania, so it probably comes down to preference. Lithuania got 90 points in the grand final, with 58 of those coming from the televote, and the other 32 from the jury vote. Like Extra said, there's not much going on vocally or staging wise, and is instead more of a pop, so it naturally attracts more televotes. Latvia is now able to vote for their fellow Baltic, and the UK, Ireland and Ukraine stay up high for aforementioned reasons. As for the jury, the only ones who put Lithuania in the top 5 are Portugal and Serbia. Not sure why, but juries will be juries. Sylvester naturally smashed the televote in Lithuania's national final, which is the only thing that mattered in its super final. But in its not super final, Shower got more jury votes with their song Impossible. Nice. In 5th place in the first semi and 13th in the grand final is Luxembourg, with Tali singing Fighter. Now that we're at place number 13, we've made it to the fabled left-hand side of the leaderboard. And if there's any country I was hoping would make it there, it was Luxembourg. Not inherently because of the performance, but simply because I want them to keep coming back. And a result like this should be a big confidence boost. Although, I'm gonna be honest, I don't feel great about Luxembourg forcing their artists in the national final to sing songs they didn't submit, in order to have a better chance at winning. Okay, yeah, it worked out well this time, but I don't know if throwing money at foreign songwriters is the way to go in the future. Tali was stuck with a song that didn't really fit her niche at all in the end. However, while I may think Luxembourg's strategy is kind of ridiculous, Tali was still able to pull off the performance with flying colors. And I think that really shows her dedication to improvement and her ability to adapt to the situation. The song Fighter itself is one I was a little bit iffy about for a while. It's in a similar boat as Cyprus and Georgia. Typical pop songs that need the artists to elevate them. Otherwise, the Eurovision bubble will think nothing of them. Though the general public usually likes them well enough either way. But what eventually did make me like the song quite a lot is something that I also praised Australia for. It's sung in multiple languages. Most of the song is French, but the chorus is English. I think that's really neat. And especially switching between two languages that I can understand tickles my brain a little bit. But another thing that tickles my brain is not the song itself, but this sound effect they play like 3 times. I love this sound effect, it sounds so good, it's my favorite part of the whole performance. I don't struggle with autism, I'm actually very good at it. As for the staging, it's well, let's just say they were very inspired by Beba. I mean look, I joke about it, but I don't mind the fact that there are purple kitties on screen. They are cute, call them 3 or something. So in the end, I think Luxembourg did pretty well. But there's one thing I wanna note. Luxembourg's song is called Fighter, while Georgia's song is called Firefighter. Like, come on, Luxembourg. You're not just gonna let them one-up you like that, right? Luxembourg hasn't participated in a while, so we might not have a lot to go off of voting block-wise. But maybe we'll see new voting blocks develop. They got 117 points in the first semi. The most came from Portugal at 10. Now, it's true that there is a large Portuguese diaspora in Luxembourg, but what about the opposite relation here? Maybe Portuguese people in Luxembourg called their relatives in Portugal and told them to vote for Luxembourg? Could be the case. Also in the upper echelons are Azerbaijan, Cyprus and Serbia. In hindsight, with the way Azerbaijan and Cyprus have voted so far, maybe they just like pop songs. That doesn't really explain why their televotes didn't give Luxembourg any points in the final, but that's because barely anyone gave Luxembourg televotes in the grand final, surprisingly. Luxembourg got 103 points in the grand final, with a measly 20 coming from the televote. I suppose people saw other pop songs in the grand final and voted for them instead. Did the running order have something to do with Luxembourg being forgotten? I don't know, but it's kind of insane that a song that's such a televote magnet to go from getting points from every single country in the semi to getting barely any televotes. But sure, rest of the world because Tali is a globetrotter, and France and Belgium because they're neighbors. Maybe we can see a bigger relationship with those two if they perform in the same semi-final in the future. The jury gave the other 83 points, though I'm not sure what attracted the jury to specifically this performance in the first place. Azerbaijan is yet again there for the pop, and France is there because of linguistic narcissism. The Luxembourgish national final was, like I said, a little scuffed because of the artists having to sing songs that were forced upon them, but good job to Crick for winning the televote by 1 point with Drowning in the Rain. With how good her voice is, she's one of the people I really hope will represent Luxembourg one day. In 12th place in the grand final is Germany, with Isaac singing Always on the Run. No way! On the left hand side of the leaderboard? Germany sweep! A lot of people actually thought Germany was going to place dead last with this again. But I think Germany is part of a trifecta with Cyprus and Luxembourg, of performances which the Eurovision bubble didn't care about, but the general public did. There are always going to be some of those countries that come out of left field for us. But it's a good thing that Germany was one of them, cause they really needed a break. Though I hope it doesn't deter them from sending in a more daring song in the future. Getting 12th is a huge accomplishment for Germany, and shows that Isaac is definitely not nothing but the average. But while it being one of the most radio-friendly songs on the list this year is likely why people voted for it, Germany didn't actually get many televotes to begin with. Most votes, just like with Luxembourg, came from the juries. And that's probably not because of the staging, it may be a bit too simplistic. It's because Isaac has some of the best vocals this year. I know I say that a lot, but this time it's like his vocals are somewhere in the top 5. It's the thing that Isaac goes all in on, and is the thing that makes this song stand out. Now, that's not to say the staging is bad or anything, the staging perfectly matches the mood, and that's more than what Belgium can say, that's for sure. And I like it when Isaac is standing next to the barrel that's on fire. Isaac is on the left. What I rather think is a main missed opportunity with this performance is that he skips this part. Oh come on, you can do it, Isaac, say it, say the word shit, I know you want to, I know you can do it. Germany got 117 points in the grand final. And like Extra said, most of those came from the jury, with the public only giving 18. Austria and Switzerland are there because they also speak German and are Germany's neighbors. Not much to say. The jury gave the others staggering 99 points. But since it mostly came down to Isaac's vocals, there's not much to say here either. Austria and Switzerland aren't even present after all. You could say that Belgium and France are their replacements, I guess. Isaac won both the jury vote and televote in Germany's national final. But good job to Max Mutzke for coming second in both with Forever Strong. In 5th place in the first semi and 11th place in the grand final is Greece, with Marina Sati singing Zari. Is it weird to say that sometimes I'm really scared of writing a segment, for the sole reason that I'm so passionate about it, that I'm afraid I might forget something I want to write about in my excitement, or that I'm not able to fully get my feelings across? Well, just in case, let me make my feelings very clear. Holy shit, this is awesome! Alright, there you go, now let's get into the actual segment. So remember all the way back in Albania segment that I was talking about how much I love it when different genres are mixed together into one Eurovision song? There will be some more songs after this that will also mash up different genres, but I think that Zari is the climax of that idea. Zari is a combination of about 200 different songs, or just lyrics or melodies, sent in by Greeks who wanted Marina to use those tunes or words in her song. Not only that, Marina doesn't just produce music with Greek sounds, but also Arab, Balkan and Turkish ones. And there's probably a lot more I'm forgetting here that makes her music even more of a blender. The result is Zari, a hodgepodge of different beats, instruments and lyrics. It's a song about leaving your life in the hands of fate, falling like an unpredictable die, which is something that many Greeks feel like their life became after the 2008 economic crisis. And I don't want to tell Greek people how they should feel about this song, that's their own decision. If you don't like it, then that's okay. But I personally love that Marina decided to show us this side of Greece. So much that she's one of the only Eurovision artists whose discography of songs I've bothered to take a look at. Simply because I wanted more of this. Like, dang, I'm one of those loser nerds who likes to listen to video game OSTs. But now I understand what you people with actual taste in music are talking about when you worship Taylor Swift. But I understand why Zari didn't click with some people, because the staging didn't quite communicate its ideas well enough. You see, the song depends on the accompanying music video to really show why it's so great. It parodies how reliant the Greek economy is on tourism, and how Greece is mostly perceived as ancient Greece in the eyes of foreigners. But that's not what Greece is anymore. The Greece of our current generation is what Zari represents. A beautifully chaotic mix of everything. Look, just watch the Overthinking It video on it. I'm not being nearly as detailed as I should be. But was that stuff translated over into the performance? Another missed opportunity is that the Greek delegation was planning on recording the whole performance in one shot, similarly to what Marina did in the music video of her song Mantissa, which blew the hell up in 2017. This entire thing is just one continuous shot, so let's see that with Zari. Okay, that's 1. That's 2. Okay, and that's 3. Those are 3 shots. Doesn't seem like much, but any more than the one they were planning kind of strays away from the main idea, you know? But leaving that aside, this was one of my favorite performances of the show, and in between writing some of these segments, I listened to it again and again just cause I wanted to. Marina's vocal performance was also really good, especially because she was ill on the night of her semi-final. Thankfully she felt better during the grand final. Greece got 86 points in the second semi. The absence of many Balkan countries whose musical styles were incorporated into Zari likely hurt her score a bit, but Albania is still present so they gave 8 points. Armenia gave the most at 12 points, since Greece and Armenia have historically been in a voting bloc. Belgium and Switzerland are also high up, but I don't think they are known for always giving Greece a lot of points, and they're also not the ones being catered to in diverse musical styles. They're both still present in the grand final televote, so there definitely is something more going on here. Maybe this is the Turkish diaspora in Western Europe? Your guess is as good as mine. Greece got 126 points in the grand final, with 85 coming from the televote. Cyprus gave 12 points to Greece. This is truly shocking news. Then there's also Armenia as usual, and Serbia, who is also in a voting bloc with Greece and definitely appreciates the Balkan flair of Zari. San Marino's grand final televote is based on an aggregate of countries around them, so they gave a lot of points because Greece also appeals to a Mediterranean bloc. I'd also like to highlight the rest of the world vote being present in both the semi and grand final. With countries like Bulgaria, North Macedonia, Bosnia and Turkey not participating, their votes were likely the deciding factor here. But Zari also went viral globally on Spotify, so maybe it went even more beyond that. The other 41 points came from the jury, still having Armenia, Albania, Cyprus and Serbia, but Switzerland yet again chose up to now give out 12 points. Everyone was just as surprised as Marino was. Might be related to Balkan diaspora, since we were talking about the Kosovar diaspora in Switzerland before, but you'd think the televote would pull through on that front instead of the jury vote. It could once again come down to these specific jurors all coincidentally happening to like the performance. One of the Swiss jurors is Arabic after all. Thank you Marina for representing the Balkan countries who couldn't make it. In 8th place in the first semi and 10th place in the grand final is Portugal, with Yolanda singing Grito. Portugal has a certain identity in their Eurovision songs, which isn't necessarily a genre. Since 2017, what they all mostly have in common is that they do their own thing and don't completely follow what's popular, but still pull off a high placement due to the sheer quality of the performance. They take the bare minimum of staging and make it work. Hell, the artists and the backup dancers kinda become the staging themselves. With that formula, Portugal had literally my favorite performance out of all of them last year. They don't take that spot again, but I can't deny that Portugal pulled off their formula even more successfully this year. Yolanda herself is the main reason why. She is another artist whose vocals are definitely in the top 5, and the jury seemed to agree. Just look at how barren the grand final televote is in comparison to it. This is a jury song through and through. So to qualify from the semi with a 100% televote system while having to compete with Serbia's Ramonda is very impressive. Just like with Serbia, Grito stands out from the other songs by being a female ballad with a slow tempo in a competition where being loud and out there is the norm. I do think that the staging is pretty scary because it has white people, people dressed in white. But for real, I really like the monochrome look, it's slick. I praise Lithuania for also having a mix of two colors that contrast well, and the same goes for Portugal. So with all of that, Portugal naturally shot into the jury's 7th place. But I can also see why the televote barely gave it any love. You get 3 minutes on stage, and if you aren't able to wow people with something exceptional, then they won't vote for you. There were definitely things that could have wowed people in the background and lyrics of Grito, but most people listen to it for the first time during either the semi or grand final and don't speak Portuguese. And I wouldn't blame anyone for not doing any research beforehand. I know I sure didn't. But I do hope that Portugal keeps this strategy going. It makes them one of the most exciting countries to look forward to. Portugal got 58 points in the first semi, but the only country who put Portugal in their top 5 was Luxembourg. This is definitely the start of a voting bloc between the two, since there is a very large Portuguese diaspora in Luxembourg. Around 14% of Luxembourg's population is Portuguese. It's to be expected. The other countries who gave points probably did so because, like Extra said, it stands out. Portugal got 152 points in the grand final. A big jump, but you wouldn't notice that from the televote, which only gave a measly 13 of those points. Luxembourg is here again, and France is also to be expected because of the Romance language block. The jury gave the other 139 points. France, the UK and Croatia gave their 12s. France once again because of the language, the UK has been historically close with Portugal, and Croatia I'm not sure about, but considering how much the song appeals to the juries anyway, I'm not gonna bother thinking about it too much. Luxembourg is pretty low here in comparison to other juries, so maybe there weren't any Portuguese jurors on their team. Their names sound mostly German and French. Yolanda ran away with the jury vote and almost a televote as well in Portugal's national final, but good job to João Bosch for winning the televote with Pelas Costuras and coming in second. In 9th place in the grand final is Sweden, with Marcus and Martinez singing Unforgettable. I like to imagine Sweden being in their little laboratory using various chemicals to concoct the perfect radio-friendly pop song with the right beats, tempo and catchy hook, alongside the perfect white boys to send off to Melodifestivalen to win it, then letting them go to Eurovision as well. You know, just on the side, not as important. And despite you thinking that the lyrics are subpar, you'll put them in your top 10 anyway, because we mortals are not immune to guilty pleasures. The Swedish sweep is inevitable. It shall course through your veins and puppet your circulatory system. All that is to say, yeah, Marcus and Martinez did pretty well. However much you might complain, you can't deny that Sweden's strategy of producing the most fine-tuned pop songs is a strategy that just works. Marcus and Martinez already had a ton of experience in the field, to the point where they won the Swedish version of Masked Singer in 2022 and came second in Melodifestivalen in 2023. They only lost because of, just a small unknown artist. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, Loreen, but producing good pop songs isn't the only reason why Sweden does so well all the time. Cause Sweden also knows how to produce stagings that make your eyes go blind. It's the Matrix that's actually pretty dang cool. I don't know in what way it relates to the song, but as long as it looks sick, it doesn't actually matter. Yeah, Sweden did well again. That much is obvious before they even announce which song and artist they're sending. Let's just get into the score. Sweden got 174 points in the grand final, but notably only 49 of those came from the televote. You shouldn't take that as Sweden performing poorly in the televote, because those points were so concentrated at the top anyway, they still got 11th, which is impressive. Them also having to perform first made them a bit forgettable, unlike the song. You can see countries like Norway, Iceland and Denmark here, parts of the Scandinavian bloc. And it's no surprise that Norway is the highest because Marcus and Martinez are Norwegian and have charted in Norway. Moldova also being here corroborates the theory that Moldova just likes pop songs. Not confirmed of course, but there's that. The jury gave the other 125 points, but the only Nordics who put Sweden in their top 5s are Finland and to an extent Estonia. Some other countries that gave a lot were Germany, Ireland, Czechia, Spain and Ukraine. I don't really consider any of those countries that always give their highest amounts of points to other countries in their voting bloc, so maybe that's why. Ukraine is kind of an exception, but without Poland or Moldova in the grand final, they don't have much to vote for besides Lithuania. And while Marcus and Martinez won both the televote and jury vote in Melodifestivalen, good job to Medina for coming in second with Que Sera. Would have been pretty funny if Sweden sent a song where the chorus is just Spanish for some reason, but San Marino already took that niche. In third place in the second semi and 8th place in the grand final is Armenia, with Ladaniva singing Jako. Let's go! Armenia sweep! Waiting to reveal Armenia as the last qualifier in the second semi was so cruel. I really didn't want Eurovision to take away my opportunity to sing my Lalalays in the grand final. And I think the same goes for a lot of people. Jako is kind of like the best parts of Zora and the best parts of Zari combined. Zora in the sense that it's a song about women empowerment, and that the artist herself, Jacqueline, has extreme charisma, having the crowd around her fingertips. And Zari in the sense that the song was influenced by many different musical cultures. Also Balkan, but also across various distinct cultures, like Latin American and African ones. Yet the performance is still incredibly Armenian and folky. Might be the only true folk song in the whole grand final. You can see it in the staging, the outfit, the language. Okay, yeah, that's it. But that's all it needs to feel Armenian. But if that was all, it wouldn't have gotten this high. No, there's a super secret ingredient in this performance that hypnotized everyone into voting for it. It's just fun. This is one of those songs you should play if you're ever faced with a serial killer in your home. All you have to do is blast this song at the maximum volume and the vibes will be completely off for murder to occur. Don't actually do that, please call the police. Point is, Jacqueline's smile is infectious and you will dance, it's inevitable, give up. Also shout out to Louis Thomas, the other half of Ladaniva. He's just chillin' there with his trumpet and flute, providing a nice relief from Jacqueline's energy for a little while. The main complaint I hear regarding this performance is that there isn't much going on lyrically. I mean, most of it is literally just la la la. But I don't know, I don't really think it needs to be super deep or anything. Hell, I think that the simple lyrics are part of the reason why the song is so infectious in the first place. You don't need to think about the lyrics, so it makes singing them very easy. It's a real strength of the song in my opinion. Armenia got 137 points in the second semi. Every single country gave them points, including the rest of the world, so no country gave them lower than 4 points. Georgia, France and Greece have always been in a voting bloc with Armenia, and San Marino also put Armenia in their top 3s. Armenia apparently got a lot of points from the juries in the grand final, so I guess it makes sense why San Marino is here. But I'm not sure why it's specifically San Marino, because they still gave Armenia 8 points in the final. They didn't budge a bit. The Netherlands is not in a voting bloc with Armenia, but since the country was swept up by the Joost Tide, who also had a fun song, the Dutch might have wanted to vote for similar songs, but I'm not sure. The rest of the world vote is easy to explain though, because like Extra said, Ladaniva uses musical styles from all around the world in their own music. Armenia got 183 points in the grand final, with 82 coming from the televote. France and Georgia are still very high, but then there's a bit of a gap until we see the other countries. Since Armenia had pretty much the only completely folk song, people who like that are gonna vote for it, which probably resulted in these small amounts of points being given out in several countries. The jury gave the other 101 points. I definitely didn't expect the jury to give more, but I guess they like fun stuff too. The highest up are San Marino, as I mentioned, and also Albania and Portugal. Albania's jury also voted Greece and Norway very high up. So I'm guessing those 5 jurors just like native flares. Portugal I'm not sure about though. The amount of points every performance has gotten has so far not increased that much between performances, but the 7th placer got a grand total of 85 more points than Armenia. For reference, the next highest amount we've seen thus far is a difference of 26 between Greece and Portugal. It's safe to say that we're getting to the best of the best now. Let's keep pushing forward. In 7th in the grand final is Italy, with Angelina Mango singing La Noia. Yo, a woman finally won the Sanremo Misogyny Festival. Nice! To give Sanremo some credit, it's similar to Melody Festivalen in that it's so hugely popular in their respective countries that every artist who participates in them is gonna try really damn hard to get that victory. Not to get sent to Eurovision, but to have a large audience in their own country. That's why Sweden and Italy keep sending songs that are winner material, and La Noia is no different. First of all, the lyrics are really good. It's about boredom not being a bad thing, because it can be used to learn more about yourself. True, whenever I'm bored I walk in circles in my room the whole time because I just had 3 cups of coffee back to back. I sure know myself. But what you might also notice is that there are a lot of lyrics in and of themselves. Like, she barely gets any time to breathe. It's impressive that she's able to keep her voice steady throughout the performance. And second of all, which I guess relates to what I just said, her voice is also just good. And I think Angelina knows it because she sings a cappella at one point. Only Italy and France had the guts to do that. And all of that was enough for me to become a little bit obsessed with it in between the second semi and the grand final. I listened to it a bunch, like how I kept listening to Zari while writing the script. Since then, not so much, but I still enjoy it of course. But apparently, my opinion of liking her second semi-final performance is the wrong opinion. So you might have noticed that the outfits of Angelina and her backup dancers are widely different between the semi-performance and final performance. I think the Italian delegation realized what people were saying about the semi-performance, which is that Angelina and the backup dancers all blend in with the background. And yeah, I guess they kinda did. But there were also complaints of the backup dancers taking away from the whole performance, and that Angelina should have been allowed to be a bit more free like at Sanremo. Like there was too much choreography, which got rid of a major part of her charisma, and it was also what put her out of breath a lot. It's rare for us to say that a performance had too much staging rather than too little, but it seems like that's the case this time. It didn't bother me personally, and judging by Italy's high placement, I don't think the rest of the general public noticed anything that was off, but yeah, they are valid complaints. So while La Noia couldn't contend for the win anymore, that doesn't take away the fact that it's an excellent performance. Italy got 268 points in the grand final. Like Extra said, that's a pretty big jump from Armenia. Oh boy, the televote gave 104 of those points, most of them being scraps in the 1 to 4 point range. But those who put Italy in the top 5s were to be expected, because almost all of them are in a voting block with them due to their geographical proximity to Italy. That's Albania, Malta, Switzerland and Croatia. Armenia rounds them off, but they aren't considered to be in a voting block with Italy. The jury gave most of the points at 164, and they're all clustered in the 5 to 10 point range. Can't believe it took this long for San Marino to show up, but hey, there they are. Albania, Malta and Armenia are still here, while Austria and Greece also often like to vote for Italy. Moldova is a main outlier. Sanremo was pretty funny because while Angelina completely won over the jury and got second in the televote, they got second with a 44% difference with Jolier's Ipeme Tupete, which smashed the televote with 60% and still didn't win because of its abysmal jury score. Wowie. In 3rd place in the first semi and 6th place in the grand final is Ireland, with Bambi Tuck singing Doomsday Blue. Oh, I wonder why Ireland is this high. They've never been one to send any quality songs since the turn of the millennium, so I'm sure this one can't be that good. So, yeah, this is the best one. The rest of y'all are all the way down there, sorry. So far, I've always been talking about 3 main components of a performance: the song, the artist, and the staging. All 3 of them form a baseline of things that need to be present, and preferably good, for a performance to blow people away at Eurovision. But especially with performances this year, it's clear that there's a 4th component I haven't been talking about. It's something that was also exploited by countries like Finland, the UK and Greece, who all did so to various degrees of success. And that component is the camera. Of course, you could just have the camera face the front of the stage the whole time, while the performance is happening. But that's boring. There are always going to be some close-up shots or some bigger shots of the crowd. It's only natural. But then there are performances like Doomsday Blue that perfect the camera so much that it feels like I'm watching a music video. It's insane that this was done live on stage, not pre-recorded. Look at all of these shots. Ireland is making camera control look like child's play. I'm not even listening to a song anymore. This is full-on cinematography. Will this influence future acts to try something similar? Maybe, but I kinda hope they do. So what about those other 3 components? The song itself is another example of that genre switching I love so much. Though like many artists at Eurovision, Bambi doesn't like putting their music in a specific genre. But you can still see and hear the difference between the demonic screeching and the bubbly, dreamy ballet dancing. You know, it's kind of hard to miss. As for the staging, while there aren't a lot of props on stage, the camera uses the few things it's got to make it pop anyway. All you need is smoke, candles, and fire at the end. Also, having the black bars on the left and right side of the screen instead of the top and bottom like all the others is a nice change of pace, and a subtle way to make it unique. Bambi lighting up the candles is one of the best shots in Eurovision ever. Would maybe be the best if it weren't for a different shot we'll take a look at later. The props are used so incredibly by the camera and the artists that you really didn't need more, else it would just take away from the performance. Instead, Ireland can focus on a different part of the staging, the costumes. Yeah, look, Bambi looks thick as hell, Matt Williams looks like he came straight out of a movie, and that costume swap that reveals a trans flag? Fucking legendary. And then all the artists had to do was execute. Bambi and Matt did some of the best choreography of the whole evening. Bambi has experience with ballet, but them doing ballet while still being able to sing is incredible. I know I've praised a lot of artists for stuff like that already, but I think that reveals how on top of their game everyone was. And as for Matt, bro, is your back okay? And I also want to give massive props to Sergio Jean, the staging director for Doomsday Blue, who was able to do all of this on such a low budget. I look forward to seeing what he cooks up at Eurovision in the future, if he does become the staging director for another Eurovision performance. My tiny brain can't fathom why people put this so low in their rankings. Like, Christians for example do so because they think it's satanic. No, dude, it's pagan. Wow, devout far-right Christians don't actually know the contents of their scriptures despite using said scriptures to justify why they don't like something? No. Really? Surely they would never do that. I for one welcome the incoming NB sweep with open arms. Crown the witch. Ireland got 124 points in the first semi. None of those were 12-pointers, but they also never went below 3. Australia and the UK are there because of the Anglophone bloc, and the rest of the world vote was probably influenced by Irish diaspora. Finland, Lithuania, Poland and Ukraine put Ireland in their top 3s. Those 4 are already pretty close to each other in Eurovision, so there's probably something going on here, but I'm not sure what. Then Ireland got 278 points in the grand final, which for once is pretty evenly split between the jury and televote, though the jury had a lot more countries concentrated at the top, while the televote had Ireland picking up mostly scraps. I think that makes sense. Some jurors recognize how masterfully crafted Ireland's staging is, and voted up really high. Some other jurors are coward babies and are afraid of their insecure Christian values being threatened. Extra put that in the script, not me. The televote meanwhile was already concentrated around other countries, but since Ireland stands out so much, they will likely still get somewhere at the bottom of every country's top 10. Televote points once again came from the UK, Australia, Ukraine and the rest of the world. Now Serbia and Spain are also up pretty high, with Serbia not even budging between the semi and final televote. I guess they really like the aesthetic. As for the jury, the only 12 Ireland got came from, again, Australia. All the other juries that are so high up are there because of Ireland's excellent staging. And good job to Alicia and next in line for both getting second in Ireland's national final with Goltoban and Love Like Us respectively. I especially want to shout out Alicia simply because part of the song is in Irish, and commentates on how Irish people forget most of the Irish they learn at school. It's a great concept, and I'd love to see Irish being sung at Eurovision in the future. In second place in the second semi and disqualified from the grand final is the Netherlands, with Joost Klein singing Europapa. By now, I think you've realized that I won't be going over the reason for their disqualification just yet, but around 5th place in the grand final was probably around where the Netherlands was going to end up if it weren't for that. This is the first time I've heard a song being sung in my own native language at Eurovision, and it makes me feel a little conflicted. You know, I like it when countries use their own native language in Eurovision, but since this is a language I can understand, it doesn't really feel that way for me specifically. So that's why I'm really thankful that this song is so silly, because it means that I don't have to think too much about the lyrics. It's really ironic that the Dutch sent such a pro-European song after voting for the party that wants them out of the EU. But sure, we can reconcile. Joost's vocals aren't anything special, but that's not the focus of the song at all anyway. It's grappig. You're supposed to dance, my friend. And holy moly does this song make you dance. And for a song like this to also have deep lyrics is something I would have never expected. I'm sure you've all heard it at this point. It's a tribute to his dead parents. I don't want to repeat what every other living person has already said about this song. But I do like the one lyric that goes like, this is a very accurate representation of turning on the radio in Belgium in the mid-2010s. This song was literally inescapable. Feels weird to be catered to in one of these songs, but yeah, I like that. But most of all, I love the staging of this performance. I think to most people it probably looks really strange, but I'm someone who grew up on the internet of the 2010s. I mean, that might have been obvious as soon as I made a Caramel Dansen reference. So to see all of those references on the back wall makes me tear up a little bit. From the shitty PlayStation 2 graphics, the blue screen of death with the stupid English-Dutch text mashup, the hi, :3, the overly dramatic flaming text, replacing the exclamation mark with a 1 like in lead speak. I love it, I love it, I love it, I love it. Words cannot explain how much I love it. I finally get to know what it feels like to be marketed to. And the staging makes so much sense for Jos as well, considering how he was trying to make it as a YouTuber ever since he was a child. Like, I know people from my elementary school who were just like him, trying to find their footing in the Dutch YouTube world. It's so endearing. I know I'm just gushing over the simple stuff, but it means so much to me. I'm very glad that Jos seems to be doing okay now. The Netherlands got 182 points in the second semi, and no country gave lower than 7 points. Considering the nature of the song is so pro-European, most countries likely just gave their points because of its universality. Those who did give 12 though were Austria, Belgium, Greece and Malta. Belgium goes without saying, they obviously ate that up, especially since Jos already had some popularity in Flanders. But yeah, those other 3 aren't traditionally in a voting block with the Dutch, so I've only got that universality to point to. We have no way of knowing how many televote points the Netherlands would have received if they participated in the grand final, but the juries actually did vote on the song. While it's not listed where the Netherlands was placed in each jury vote, you can still infer it from which numerical placement is missing. I'm taking this list from Reddit user Antizeebarenkreis, who calculated how many points the Dutch would have gotten if they were still participating, and the total is 58 points. Keep in mind that some juries might have given him low scores because he was going to be disqualified either way, but it's hard to judge. In any case, the highest amount of points came from Italy and Luxembourg at 10, Denmark and San Marino at 8, and Austria at 7. Since Italy is mentioned in the song, that might have influenced things, and Luxembourg is of course part of the Benelux. I think the others boil down to them maybe being fans of 90s music, but I didn't bother to check. Belgium is surprisingly low at just 1 point. I'm not sure, but it might be because most jurors were Wallonian instead of Flemish, but there's barely any info on the jurors online, so it's hard to say. Extra wasn't satisfied yet, so he calculated where each Belgian juror placed the Netherlands. And he found that juror A put them 9th, B put them 14th, C put them 11th, D put them 23rd, and E put them 3rd. Perhaps juror E is Flemish and the others aren't. Can't say for sure though. Alright, hopefully I won't have to deal with any more songs that are sung in languages besides English that I can understand, but which you're actually supposed to take seriously. Please. I swear to God. In 4th place in the grand final is France, with Slimane singing Mon Amour. Okay, listen, I'm not groaning because this performance sucked or that Slimane is a bad singer. No, those 2 aspects were amazing, of course they were. Otherwise no one would have voted for it. Slimane is an experienced singer. His vocals are once again definitely in the top 5, and when combined with minimalistic staging like the one here, his voice stands out even more because it's the thing your mind is drawn to. And of course, the best part is when he steps away from the microphone and he's still able to fill up the whole arena with just his raw voice. I'm honestly most impressed that Slimane was able to time when he was supposed to return to the microphone, so that he could be in sync with the background music again. I'd completely lose track of the time in this situation. So yeah, good camera work, and the minimalistic staging hugely benefits the kind of artist Slimane is. All he needs is his own voice. The absurdly high jury points were to be expected, and I think he deserves it. And he probably would have gotten even more if his voice didn't crack during the jury performance. That's pretty unfortunate. The reason why I was groaning is because I just couldn't care less about the lyrics. Like, if I'm listening to a Eurovision song with lyrics that don't really do much for me, but the song is in English, then most of the community tends to agree with me, like with Cyprus for example. But because the song is in French, I still think the lyrics are boring because I know what he's saying. But the majority of the community doesn't and still praises them. Sure, I understand that that's exactly what France's strategy is, to send in those chansons with simplistic lyrics because it's what everyone wants to see France submit. And most people still know what's going on thanks to Slimane's amazing stage presence. And of course, the last time they tried something else, this happened. And I get that France wants to avoid that at all costs. But is my complaining justified or am I just being a baby? I don't know, you tell me. But yeah, whatever, I love you Slimane, you deserve your amazing result, your voice is sexy and all that. To end all of Extra's annoying yapping, France got 445 points in the grand final, which is pretty evenly split between the jury and public. The most televotes came from Armenia who gave 12. The Armenian-French voting bloc is still going strong. Other countries who put France in their top 3s are Belgium, Greece, Iceland, Serbia, Luxembourg and Portugal. You can pin Belgium and Luxembourg down as fellow francophone countries and neighbours, and Portugal as another country with a Romance language. Not sure about the other 3 though. Televoters mostly gave France 7 or 6 points, but the jury vote is more concentrated at the top, and then trickles down below. Armenia, Belgium, Iceland and Slovenia gave their 12s, so we once again see Armenia and Belgium. Iceland once again gives a lot. I'm really not sure what that's all about. Alright, it's podium time. And lucky for you, there shall be no more complaining from this point onward. Let's go! In second place in the first semi and third place in the grand final is Ukraine, with Jerry Hale and Alyona singing Teresa and Maria. I don't know if you remember because I said it quite a while ago, but Ukraine was in the death spot. Place number 2 in the running order is really hard to recover from, because it's difficult to remember performances that were put there, both because they come so early and because they barely didn't open the show. Well, Ukraine looked at that and said, nah, I'd win. Or at least we're getting top 3 anyway. Ukraine's performance already contains a lot of stuff which I've already praised other performances for. First of all, it's another mix of genres, with Jerry singing most of the song, including the chorus, and Alyona rapping after the halfway point. Both of them provide a breath of fresh air from each other, but still synchronize well towards the end. Second, it uses multiple different languages, in this case English and Ukrainian. I especially like it when they rhyme Ukrainian words with English words. That's really dang clever. The combination of those two factors make the performance incredibly dynamic. It's always changing, and you feel like you're being taken on a journey. And besides that, of course there's the fact that both Jerry and Alyona have great vocals, and that the message of the song is also really unique. But what I want to highlight for the most part is the staging. A big reason why Ukraine keeps qualifying over and over is because they put their entire Eucharisty into making good staging. Why the hell did I put that in the script? What is wrong with me? But it's true. You can take any point in this performance and it'll probably look amazing. And this is also where the best shot of the contest took place that I was talking about during Island segment. Jerry walking up the hill while the phosphorus bombs are falling down is the best shot. No doubt in my mind. And then the ending is of course one of the best. But admittedly, I'm biased towards Crown the Witch, so it's like the second best ending in my eyes. But it again reveals how important the position of the camera is. I don't want to do Ukraine a disservice by only talking about those two shots. There were so many more ways in which the staging improved the performance. Jerry coming from the split in the wall, walking across the flood, in the middle of a whirlpool, standing in front of the hill, Alyona taking the mic out of her hair like a blade, Jerry becoming a saint, and the duo singing together while the camera spins around them. I love it all. And then seeing them get so many televote points and rise up all the way to first place for a while was so good. Thank God! Ukraine got 173 points in the first semi, with no country giving less than 6 points. At the top you can find Cyprus, Lithuania, Poland, Portugal and the rest of the world. Poland and Lithuania are as usual in the Lublin Triangle. In the rest of the world maybe because of Ukrainian diaspora or because Christianity is a widespread religion, and the song of course has heavy Christian theming. Portugal and Cyprus are less obvious, but I don't really see them specifically voting up anyone else in the first semi, so might as well make it Ukraine. They got 453 points in the grand final, most coming from the public. The televote gave 307 of those points, and 12 came from Czechia, Estonia, Georgia, Lithuania, Malta, Moldova, and Poland. Moldova actually only gave 10 in the semi and instead gave their 12 to Cyprus, which works kind of oppositely to my theory that people in the Eurovision bubble are more likely to vote in the semis, but it is what it is. Anyways, Czechia, Estonia, Georgia, Lithuania, Moldova, and Poland make sense because of how supportive they are of Ukraine. Malta is the only outlier. The juries gave 146 points, with top 3 finishes coming from, once again, Czechia, Moldova, Estonia, and Poland. Now Finland and Latvia are also there, who have also been very supportive of Ukraine. I just haven't talked about them yet because they always gave just 10 points in the televotes, but then France is the only outlier. Alyona and Jerry completely decimated the televote of Ukraine's national final, but good job to Zifferblad for winning the jury vote with Place I Call Home. In first place in the first semi and second place in the grand final is Croatia, with Baby Lasagna singing Rim Tim Tagidim. Oh dear lord, where do I even begin? Making Marko Purisic, Baby Lasagna, just a reserve in Croatia's national final is a damn crime. I mean that literally. It's probably because of the exact corruption that Baby Lasagna sings about that he wasn't allowed in. Gen Zers emigrate from Croatia and other countries like it because it's so difficult to work your way up in society due to corruption. And so those countries lose a big part of their workforce and thus don't improve. That's one of the most hard-hitting themes a Eurovision song could use, I think, because it's such a universal phenomenon across so many European countries. I mean, why else do we talk about diaspora voting so much? Because the diaspora exists, and is so large that it can have a major impact on who each country votes for. It's no wonder why Rim Tim Tagidim was the public's favorite. I'm privileged enough to the point where I personally don't resonate with it as much as other people, but pursuing higher education has also made me feel homesick, so I at least understand the feeling a little bit, even though I, for one, am able to go back, unlike so many other people. In any case, the feeling is ubiquitous. After getting such an amazing result, Marko was offered 50,000 euros by the Croatian government for promoting Croatia. Wow, what a very literal representation of the exact corruption Marko sings about in Rim Tim Tagidim. It's like you people don't actually care or something. Marco of course did the most Chad thing he could and forced the government to donate that money to 2 hospitals in his name instead, which is something that actually improves Croatian society. King, take your crown. Europe is yours. Okay, with all of that out of the way, I haven't actually talked about the performance itself yet. It's amazing, duh. Baby Lasagna is another one of those artists who has the crowd in a chokehold and uses them for backup vocals. He's able to achieve this due to both his charisma and also the incredible hype that was built up around this performance. Baby Lasagna never loses steam. The energy in this performance is constant. It's exhilarating. Which was kinda necessary to keep people's attention due to the lack of things actually going on stage, but it's still super impressive. The animals on the back wall were cool though. I liked it when the cat hit the gritty, or whatever. I don't actually know what that meme is. The only part where some of the energy is tuned down is literally the best part of the whole performance. Seeing all of the lit up bracelets in the crowd going up and down to do the dance is hype as hell. This is once again such an incredible use of the camera. Just showing the energy of the crowd energizes the viewer as well. Also, Baby Lasagna is dripped out as hell, but like this high up on the leaderboard, pretty much everyone is, so that's to be expected. Yeah, literally no other song could have won the televote. We will always meow back to you, Marco. Croatia got 177 meows, I mean points, in the first semi. At this point, the point totals are so high that it's hard to discern any voting blocks from it. In any case, 12 points came from Australia, Finland, Germany, Iceland, Serbia, Slovenia, Sweden and Ukraine, with Serbia and Slovenia being the 2 very obvious ones. Then 547 points in the grand final, winning the televote yet again with 337 points. 12 pointers came from Albania, Austria, Azerbaijan, Denmark, Iceland, Ireland, Norway, and of course Serbia and Slovenia. What I find most surprising is that Ireland and Azerbaijan actually gave less points to Croatia in the semi, and then more in the grand final, despite there being more options now. I'm not entirely sure why that is, but it could be that they were both affected by the call to settle for Croatia to stop that country from winning. Extra will probably give you a piece of his mind about that later. As for the jury, 12 points came from Serbia again, and also Cyprus. Something else that I noticed is that there have been a lot of Nordic countries in the top spots. See Finland, Iceland, Sweden and Lithuania. I'm thinking either they're voting for Croatia because the song reminded them of the Finnish Kärja last year, or because they like the techno and heavy metal sounds up there. Cyprus is actually a very interesting case, since their televote to Croatia has consistently been some of the lowest. Just 7 in the first semi and 5 in the final. I mean, yeah, that's a lot more than other countries have received, but for the televote magnet that Rim Tim Tagdim was, it's pretty funny that the Cypriot jury gave them a 12, while the Cypriot public carried the least out of almost all of Europe. It's hard to shout out anyone in particular in Croatia's national final, because Baby Lasagna dominated so much that it wasn't even close. And from online discourse, I genuinely get the impression that everyone else sucked ass. But hey, good job to Winkel for coming second with Lying Eyes. He does seem like an exception, as he's a very good singer. And finally, in 4th place in the second semi and 1st place in the grand final is Switzerland, with Nemo singing The Code. It feels bittersweet to have at last reached the end of all of the segments for every song. There was a lot of praise, a lot of criticism, and a lot of outright love. But after having praised so many performances for all kinds of things, I'm here like, how was The Code not going to win? It has literally everything I've been highlighting other performances for, but perfected to such a degree that this is just a damn masterpiece. And I don't think any other Eurovision artist has even come close to doing what Nemo has done. It has the crowd control I praised Spain for, the mix of genres that I praised Greece for, the simplicity that I praised Portugal for, the fun that I praised Armenia for, the cinematography that I praised Ireland for, the vocal prowess that I praised France for, the staging that I praised Ukraine for, and the sheer hype that I praised Croatia for. I guess all I'm still asking for is another language, but beggars can't be choosers. The central piece in this performance is the spinning and tilting plate, which Nemo does all kinds of acrobatic maneuvers on. Hell, and back. It's pretty much the only part of the staging besides the light show and Nemo's drip. But just like with Ireland's Ring of Candles, this small thing is so dang versatile. For most of the performance, Nemo is walking up and falling down, making it seem as if they're controlling it on their own, though it's obviously either remotely controlled or changes at set intervals. This stuff genuinely gives me chills. Every time the plate moves, you worry about Nemo's balance, and yet they nail their own movement every single time. Nemo might not be moving around the stage itself that much, but the plate replaces the stage, and it makes everything look so precarious and dangerous. I love it. I love how tense it is. And then after the bridge, the plate stops tilting and instead starts spinning, and Nemo just stands on it, circling all around. Not only is this such a cool way to control the crowd by facing in everyone's direction every 360 degrees, it's also so difficult. Like, look at this, they're leaning backwards while moving their arms around, while uncontrollably spinning around, and still singing a fucking opera on top of it. Like, how the actual fuck? Remember when we were talking about Loreen's interval act and how it's basically a workout? So is this. Except I guess it's less so strength training and more so endurance, like in cardio. And that brings me to another point. Nemo had the best vocal performance of the night, and it's not even close. I alluded to this earlier as a joke, but let me just come out and say that I'm autistic, and I like jumping and running all over the place. So I can say from experience that shit is tiring. I am out of breath by the time I'm done with being hyper. Now look at Nemo. They're running around all over the place, and even doing high jumps off of the plate, which looks really cool by the way. And you can hear that they're also out of breath, and yet they keep hitting the notes, despite those notes being literal operatic high notes. Dude! And then I'm not even mentioning how Nemo seamlessly switches between rapping and opera. I'm actually just speechless at this point. And you know what the best part is? The song is about Nemo feeling comfortable in their own body after coming out as non-binary. It's what the code is referring to in the first place, cause it's like binary code, which only contains ones and zeros, which is emblematic of there being two traditional gender options. Nemo winning is not only a huge victory for representation of the LGBTQIA+ community, but could also genuinely change society for the better. After winning, Nemo called on the Swiss government to legally recognize a third gender. Cause you know, Nemo's gender doesn't legally exist in Switzerland. Which is pretty messed up since they literally won Eurovision for Switzerland. Personally, I'm optimistic about it. I don't think Switzerland can run away from this issue any longer now that Nemo has won the contest. It's similar to what Baby Lasagna did in Croatia. Donating the money he got to hospitals and singing about Croatia's economic migration in general is likely to actually change Croatian society, with people remembering what Baby Lasagna did and not giving into corruption and staying in the country to make it a better place to live. It's so cool, dude. The fact that some musicians from a song contest can have such an impact on the world beyond the musical sphere makes me cry of joy a little bit. Nemo, Baby Lasagna, and any other Eurovision performer who has changed their country for the better is a winner, regardless of placement. Thank you, Nemo. I couldn't be happier with your victory. You deserve it, Monarch. Also, dang, did you hitchhike to Malmö? That's cool. It'd be funny if future Eurovision performers find other fun ways to reach their destinations. Oh come on, do I really have to talk about Switzerland's points? Doesn't all of this speak for itself? Yeah, no, I'm going on strike. But no, take it back! Alright, never mind, guess I'm doing this alone. I think that Eurovision 2024 was one of the best Eurovisions in terms of the quality of the performances. I don't know for certain because I haven't seen that many Eurovisions, but in my opinion it is the best one. So many artists were at the top of their game this year. And it's nice to see how Eurovision isn't in the state it was in the 2000s, where novelty songs that barely tried could place high. Now that Eurovision actually has a good reputation, artists are trying their best to win it, and it makes the show more entertaining for all of us. So thank you to everyone, both organizers of the contest and people in the community, who made it all feel so special. Now, when I say that Eurovision's reputation is good, I might be raising a couple eyebrows. And yes, while I would love it if I could end the video here, and pretend like nothing went wrong, like I said at the beginning, that would be disingenuous of me, especially if this is supposed to be a retrospective. So if you were only here for the silly and fun stuff, you can click off if you want. Thank you for watching all the way to here. But I don't think that's what most of you want. I think most of you are down to get a little evil, hey? Let's do this. Allow me to just kick down the door immediately. I think that Israel should have been banned from participating in the Eurovision Song Contest 2024. It is a sentiment that I was vocal about before the contest began, and that sentiment has not changed. In fact, it has only gotten stronger after seeing the measures the Israeli delegation took to ensure that their position couldn't be threatened. However, I want to note two important things before we move on. First, this is not an excuse for you to be anti-Semitic. I have a problem with Israel, not Israeli people. If I see any anti-Semitic comments, then I will delete them. Second, I want to look at Israel's participation in Eurovision in a vacuum. I do have my opinions on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which is the whole reason why people wanted to boycott Israel's participation in the first place. And I'm sure you have your own opinions on it as well. However, I am not an expert on the subject, so if you want to know more about the war, I suggest you get your information elsewhere, like from papers, videos, or personal accounts from people who were directly affected by it. So, for the sake of fairness, I want both of us, whether you support the war or not, to ignore our biases about the war and look at Israel's participation without context. Because even without the context, I still believe that Israel should have been banned because of their blatant violations of the EBU's rules. Even if you support Israel, that is not something you can run away from. Capiche? Let's start from the beginning. On the 6th of February 2024, Eden Golan won Israel's national final, and people could start submitting songs for her to sing in the song contest. Khan, the Israeli broadcaster, chose to submit a song called October Rain to the EBU, a not-so-subtle reference to a Hamas attack on the 7th of October, with multiple lyrics in the song supporting that fact. The EBU rejected it because it broke their rule of political neutrality, and called on Khan to change the lyrics or pick a different song, else Israel would not be allowed to participate. Strike 1. Khan was adamant about not changing the lyrics. And so, Israel was banned from participating and everyone cheered and clapped and also Obama was there. But we don't live in a perfect world. Khan eventually caved in and changed the lyrics of the song and retitled it to Hurricane, which is what Israel performed. Okay, sorry to interject so quickly, but seriously? Like, I get that by submitting Hurricane, Israel technically isn't breaking the rules anymore. But that doesn't change the fact that this song was made with the October attacks in mind. Anyone who knows this story and listens to the song will understand that it's about the attacks, even if it isn't referred to anymore. If Israel was gonna participate, I think the whole song should have been scrapped, and a different one should have been selected. What they did here is just scummy in my opinion. Whatever, moving on. Israel was thus allowed to participate on the 7th of March, which sparked a lot of different calls for Israel's exclusion from some broadcasters and former participants. Most notably though, a joint statement demanding a ceasefire in Gaza and the return of all hostages was published by Bambi, Gote, Yolanda, Megara, Musti, Nemo, Ollie, Saba, Sylvester, and Windows 95 Man. In response, Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Eden filmed a bunch of videos in many different languages to be shown as YouTube advertisements, which urged people to vote for Israel. I hadn't seen any of those ads myself because I use uBlock Origin like a reasonable person, but this is something that their Ministry of Foreign Affairs straight up admitted was part of their strategy to increase the amount of votes Israel would receive. Strike 2. And we began seeing the results of it after the qualifiers of the second semi-final were revealed. The Italian broadcaster leaked the result of the Italian televote right there on the screen during the recap. And to everyone's collective horror, Israel had received 39% of the Italian televote. This isn't something that broadcasters usually do. The full results of the semi-final televotes are revealed by the EBU themselves after the contest. And it probably wasn't an accident either considering how these were pre-prepared graphics. No, this was a warning. It's telling us that Israel is gonna win the final if we don't do something about it. 39% is huge, and isn't something that can just naturally be gained. I am pretty sure the advertisement had an influence on that number. But another reason why that number is so high is because of people who voted for Israel the maximum amount of times, despite not even having watched the contest. Multiple Israel supporters have come out and admitted that they spent their 20 votes, or more, on Israel just to counter the protests against them. Strike 3. That's how Israel was able to achieve such an inflated point count. It's not that there's a silent majority of people who support Israel, rather there are a handful of people who have nothing better to do in their sorry, pitiful lives. Especially when many of them are political leaders, who egged on their supporters to do the same thing. And don't even try claiming that that's not what happened. During the Flemish broadcast of the second semi-final, when Eden was performing, a union connected to the Flemish broadcaster VRT displayed this message on screen, preventing people from watching Israel's performance. I actually didn't see this myself, because I wasn't watching VRT's broadcast, but instead the live stream on the YouTube channel. And yet, Belgium still gave 10 points to Israel. Only the Netherlands is higher at 12. So which is more likely? That the entire Wallonian population came together to vote for Israel to boost them up to 10 points, or that many Flemish viewers voted for Israel anyway for political reasons, despite most of them not having seen the performance at all? What a mystery. Now, while Israel may claim that there's a silent majority that's actually in favor of them, that's not actually true. Most European citizens are against Israel. It's just that those people either boycotted the contest and so didn't vote, or they voted for a different act besides Israel. But of course, there were 24 acts that weren't Israel, and so all the votes were split between them. Meanwhile, Israel supporters only voted for Israel, making their amount of points seem large in comparison. Israel also controlled which countries their own citizens voted for. The Khan commentators specifically mentioned which contestants they approved of and which ones they didn't during the broadcast, urging watchers to not vote for the contestants they didn't like, which were, of course, the ones who were the most outspoken against them. Strike 4. Bambi Thug even called for Israel to be disqualified from the contest after they were given negative comments by the Israeli broadcaster before their semi-final performance. Wanna know why Luxembourg won both the jury vote and televote of Israel in the grand final? Because Tali is Israeli, and had been hanging out with the Israeli delegation. So of course their commentators would encourage you to vote for Luxembourg. Let me just say, there were points during the making of this video in which I was seriously considering not covering some other countries besides Israel. One of those was Luxembourg, because of Tali herself. I eventually chose to keep Luxembourg in because it's not specifically Luxembourg that's committing any war crimes. It's just that they chose a very unfortunate artist to represent themselves. The other country I was planning on not discussing was Azerbaijan. They have also violated human rights several times, especially due to the recent dissolvement of Nagorno-Karabakh, which saw most Armenians in the region fleeing. I chose to cover them as well because, as far as I know, I don't think Fari is a bad person. Besides him getting selected by Azerbaijan's national broadcaster, I don't think he's connected to the Azerbaijani government. It's a decision I'm still unsure about, so I definitely understand wanting Azerbaijan to be left out of the conversation. Let's just say it's a good thing that they didn't qualify. But back to Israel. That's how they secured all of their votes, and that's how they manipulated who Israel voted for. Now, all the Israeli delegation had to do was make sure that they would go unopposed by the other delegations. First order of business, prevent the Palestinian Bashar Murad from winning the Icelandic national final. Many Icelanders reported a glitch in the national finals voting system, where their votes for Bashar didn't register or were given to Hera instead. We can't really say how involved Israel was in this specifically, but I think it's still worth noting, because a Khan employee also organized a campaign against Bashar, attempting to influence Icelandic voters. For being a country so staunchly against Israel, I find it pretty unfortunate that Bashar did not win the Icelandic national final, and then proceeded to get last place. But Iceland was only one potential threat. At Eurovision itself, Israel would of course have to face more. Well, thankfully for them, the EBU basically gave them a blank check for literally no reason. Eric Saada is wearing a keffiyeh during his performance because it's a Palestinian symbol and he literally is Palestinian. Condemned for political actions. Yolanda is adorned with fingernails that have patterns of keffiyeh on them, which is something that literally nobody would have actually noticed unless told. The upload of your performance gets delayed and haphazardly added to the playlist later. Pambi painted the word ceasefire on their face in the Ogham script, a script used to write Irish in 1300 fucking years ago, which nobody could actually read unless it was explicitly told to them that that's what it meant. Forced to change it to crown the witch instead. Member of the Israeli delegation shows off a pin of a yellow ribbon when Israel receives its televote points. Oh, that one is allowed actually. Huh, I wonder why. So of course, the audience's natural reaction to any time Israel is mentioned is to boo. Not only during their performance, but also when any jury gave them any amount of points. Not gonna lie, that's kinda funny. I can close my eyes while the jury vote is happening and still know which countries gave points to Israel because of the booing. But with the performance specifically, the EBU yet again has Israel's back. Because while the arena sounded like this, the live stream sounded like this. Ah yes, the EBU is using anti-booing technology to weaken how loud the booing is, and is also adding fake applause to make it seem as if people are cheering for Israel. Strike 5. To talk a bit more about the booing, there are 3 main opinions on it from what I've seen. The first is from supporters of Israel who argue that Eden Golan is just a little girl, and is being unfairly bullied. The second is from critics of Israel who argue that the people aren't booing against Eden, but instead against Israel's actions at Eurovision as a whole. And you know, I have a lot of respect for that second group. Those are people who are able to stay calm and collected during such a difficult time. They see the bigger picture and urge people to keep focusing on the broader enemy, which are the EBU and Israel. However, I am not calm nor collected. I am part of the third group, which argues that Eden absolutely deserved to get booed. By explicitly choosing to represent Israel, she thus also condones all of Israel's rule violations during the contest. She never spoke up against it. Sidebar, she is not a little girl. She is a grown-ass woman. By infantilizing her, Israel's supporters are trying to make Eden look like an innocent child who is getting ridiculed for things she has no control over, even though she absolutely does have control over things. Booing is a form of protest that doesn't cause harm to Eden herself. It's civil, while still showing what the opinion of the crowd is. Of course I wouldn't condone any harm against her, but booing is perfectly fine. It's like disliking a YouTube video. It's harmless, but still shows off the public opinion. Surely they wouldn't take that away from us as well. Oh wait. And for the last piece of the puzzle, the Israeli delegation continuously harassed other delegations by provoking them, by filming them without their permission, and by negatively commenting on them on social media. The harassment was especially targeted against the Dutch delegation, the Irish delegation, and the Greek delegation. Many other delegations also lodged complaints after witnessing the harassment, such as the Portuguese broadcaster, the Slovenian broadcaster, and the Spanish broadcaster. Strike 6. Whichever way you slice it, Israel's actions during this year's Eurovision Song Contest breached the EBU's rules, and Israel should have been disqualified as soon as even one of those strikes hit. Multiple artists, journalists, and delegation members felt uncomfortable backstage due to the actions of the Israeli delegation, including Windows 95 Man, Bambi Thug, Nemo, Angelina Mango, who literally started singing Imagine by John Lennon in a press center because of it, Sylvester Belt, who wished he didn't qualify in a now deleted tweet because having to perform after Israel was a traumatic experience for him, and I am definitely missing more examples. Israel broadcaster claims it faced unprecedented hatred at Eurovision? Oh! I wonder why! If there's any broadcaster that faced unprecedented hatred at Eurovision this year in the face of the EBU's disregard, then personally I would select a different one. You probably know what happened to Jos Klein already, so let's go over this really quickly. Jos was a Dutch representative this year and he competed in the second semi-final. After his performance, something happened backstage which caused a complaint to be filed against him. After investigation by the Swedish police, the case was handed over to a prosecutor. Joost was also disqualified from the song contest after an internal investigation by the EBU itself. That decision didn't happen smoothly though. You should watch ESC Gabe's video here, because he was actually present, and so he can talk about the events in more detail. But as far as I know, the EBU still hadn't figured out what to do about the Netherlands when the rest of the world vote should have been opened. In the case that the Netherlands would have gotten disqualified, it would have obviously been a huge hassle to have to refund everyone who had already voted for the Netherlands. So the opening of the rest of the world vote was delayed. There was also a period of time in which the Dutch weren't even going to be allowed to vote. At least not for the Netherlands separately, instead being included in the rest of the world vote. And what caused even more of a panic was when Malta's Sarah Bonici told us on social media that some exciting news was coming, making everyone think that she was going to replace Joost in the grand final. But no, she actually just released a new song. Girl, bad timing. And then she released the next one on September 11th. Okay, no, you're just doing this on purpose now. Anyways, the EBU eventually realized that it would have been a stupid decision to not allow the Dutch to vote, and reversed that. The Netherlands was still included in the jury show, which is how we were able to figure out Joost's jury points earlier, but he didn't actually perform live. Instead, his semi-final 2 performance was shown. I've been intentionally vague about what really happened that caused the complaint to get filed in the first place, but that's because we don't really know what happened. The EBU described it as threatening behavior directed at a female member of the production crew, and the Swedish broadcaster SVT adds that Joost made unlawful threats. Okay, elaborate? No? Oh, okay. I guess that's all we're getting from their side. Now, before we move on, I would like to admit something to all of you. When this news first leaked when I woke up after watching the second semi-final, I wasn't on Joost's side like pretty much everyone else was. And the reason why is because I've been watching YouTube videos for a really long time, long before I began Extra in Exile. I've seen my fair share of creators get driven off of the platform because of allegations against them. And at this point, I've accepted that there are some people with large numbers next to their names, whose content I enjoy, who aren't good people, as unfortunate as it may be. So when I first learned of this news, my immediate reaction was, oh yeah, I've heard this story 100 times already. Kinda sucks that it's happening in Eurovision though. And afterwards I waited for information to come out about what exactly went down. So I waited. And I waited. And waited. Waited. Okay, what the heck is going on? While Eurovision was happening, I was still working on the 2-hour-long Africa video, and figured that some info was gonna spill by the time I was done with it, which would allow me to start working on this video. I am writing this towards the end of June, and I've still got nothing. I'm recording this in the middle of September, and besides a statement after the court case was dropped, I've still got basically nothing. The longer the EBU makes me wait for official information, the more and more I become skeptical of their decision to disqualify Joost, and the more it makes me latch onto the story of the Dutch broadcaster Avrotos instead. It reminds me of an important distinction when it comes to YouTubers being driven off of the platform. There are those that don't get supported by their fans, and those that do. You know someone is done for if their friends also come out against them. Cancel culture has definitely swung correctly when that happens. And then all that's left to do is watch the fireworks, because most people only care about seeing the culprit burn rather than actually supporting the victim. But there are also YouTubers who receive support from their fans, which makes me think maybe the allegations against him were a little bit fishy? And in Joost's case, I began to think it's the latter, because Avrotos unanimously defended him. They said that Joost's disqualification was an unproportional punishment and disapprove of it. Their claim is that Joost was filmed after his performance, despite him saying multiple times that he didn't want to be filmed. And when the person operating the camera didn't respect his wish, he made a threatening move towards the camera, but didn't touch the camera woman. When this is the only solid information we have, when the EBU isn't refuting it and instead remains silent, I have no choice but to take it as the truth. There simply isn't another narrative. I'm surprised that the EBU had the guts to claim that disqualifying Joost was a unanimous decision, when they were clearly struggling to get their, musically unrelated, act together. And if you do take Avrotos' story as the truth, then all you can do is wonder, why wasn't Israel treated the same? Now, keep in mind that the Israeli delegation didn't have anything to do with Joost's disqualification. That's entering conspiracy theory territory, and Avrotos also denied it. But juxtaposing the Netherlands and Israel next to each other really makes me question why the Netherlands was disqualified, and Israel wasn't for doing things that were way worse than what Joost did. To update you on what has happened since, the Swedish prosecutor in charge of Joost's case dropped the case in August, not finding any evidence of criminal conduct on Joost's part. On one hand, that's obviously great. But on the other hand, it really makes you think why such a fuss was made over it in the first place. While Avotos was unsure if they wanted to participate the next year, wanting structural adjustments, they got an extension to choose if they will or won't until the 1st of November. And to be honest, the fact that they're mulling it over so hard means that they're probably gonna participate anyway, now that a lot of time has passed, but we're not sure. In any case, if they don't, I'll understand. This should have been the time when the EBU profusely apologizes to the Netherlands, offers them an automatic qualification in 2025, or do anything else to get the Dutch back on their good sides. But no, the EBU doesn't seem to be interested in any of that, because both throughout and after the contest, they were perfectly fine with just sitting in a puddle of their own ignorance. I feel like I'm being treated like a child when I'm not given any information about the Dutch DQ from the EBU itself, as if I just wouldn't understand. It baffles me that they chose to have a very obvious gap between number 4 and number 6 that just never gets addressed by the hosts. Like, imagine the people at home being like, oh wow, those Eurovision guys, they sure suck at counting. Cause like, what else are you supposed to infer from this if the EBU doesn't allow the host to say anything about why there's a gap here? I don't even know if calling the EBU incompetent is even accurate, because at times it really seems like the EBU is selectively unknowing based on who is complaining. The Dutch broadcaster isn't even the only one that has complained to the EBU about their conduct. Norway's broadcaster has called on the EBU to stop blaming artists and delegations for the problems that it created itself. Slovenia's broadcaster wants more information about how Slovenians voted, the Dutch DQ, and wants to talk about how the EBU should change to ensure the contest's future. Alessandra Melle and Czechia, who represented Norway and Finland respectively last year, both withdrew from being the spokesperson for their respective juries. And I'm certain that many different journalists lodged complaints because they were also being harassed, or noticed how tense the situation was. None of those things were addressed by the EBU. They never communicated with any of those broadcasters or the spokespeople. This is why I said that, while I would have preferred to see We Just Love Eurovision Too Much in the grand final, I'm not sure if Czechia would have still performed if that was the case, which would have been a huge issue. What the EBU did do is hold multiple crisis meetings with participants like Bambi, Marina, Ollie, Nemo, Yolanda, and Gote. I don't think they were held because those artists threatened to drop out or anything. Bambi likely initiated one of those because they heard about the comments Khan was making about them. I imagine the others were present in those meetings for similar reasons, like harassment and censorship. But it did cause Bambi to miss their dress rehearsal, caused Bambi, Marina, and Nemo to be absent from the family show flag parade, and Slimane made a speech promoting peace during the a cappella part of his family show performance, seemingly to communicate to the audience that he was not okay with what was happening backstage. The fact that an artist was driven to the point of doing that is insane to me. And if all of that wasn't enough for you, the EBU completely messed up their flag policy. I already talked about how Nemo bringing the non-binary flag to the flag parade was technically non-allowed. And as Nemo notes, that is one hell of a double standard. And another example of the EBU being very selective when enforcing their rules. Technically, the non-binary flag wasn't banned per se, it just wasn't on the list of permitted flags. And yeah, if I'm the security guard who has to check everyone's backs to make sure they're not bringing in any Molotovs, I'd probably reject any flag that wasn't on the list regardless of how harmless they were, because I wouldn't want to lose my job. I don't think the EBU was intentionally malicious in banning any pride flag that wasn't the rainbow flag, but it still shows a severe lack of foresight. And besides the hiccup with the non-binary flag, their inconsistent flag policy blew up in their face in the funniest way imaginable. There is another very notable flag used in Europe that isn't the flag of any participating country or the rainbow flags. You know, the flag of the European Union. Again, not banned, but in practice, it pretty much was. Because of this, the EBU got into hot water with the Vice President of the European Commission. Damn, that is really funny. The Director General of the EBU had to respond to the EC, basically saying, well, it wasn't banned, so sorry that you feel that way. Ah, so now you talk, eh, big guy, when you're faced with an even bigger guy? And you're not really even apologizing anyway. Can't say I'm surprised at this point. The EBU's incompetence during ESC 2024 has understandably frustrated a lot of people, and many started calling for Executive Supervisor Martin Oosterdal to step down from his role. Now, while he was obviously not solely responsible for everything, most decisions still had to go through him. And as a symbolic leader of the whole operation, people want him to step down to show the good faith of the company. That's why he was booed against when announcing that the host could start giving out the points, and when he gave out the points of the Dutch jury himself after the Dutch delegation chose not to out of protest. But that hasn't happened yet, and it definitely won't at this point. The EBU independently reviewed their own conduct after the show and came up with 3 development areas, basically saying this is what we'll improve on in the future. It's about some of the stuff we've already talked about, making sure that complaints aren't ignored, that the rules on what is and what isn't allowed are clear, and to have more control over people on social media. That last one is especially important, but I'll get back to that later. In addition, they also talked about creating a new role called the ESC Director, which takes some responsibilities away from the Executive Supervisor. This means that Martin Österdahl keeps his position, but some of the things he used to be in charge of have been given to the new role. I like that the EBU seems to be doing something, but I don't think it's enough. Even still allowing Israel to participate next year already makes me feel uncomfortable with their decision. And why do you think they do so?
Money!
It's because of this damn eyesore that shows up at the bottom of the screen all the time. Moroccan Oil is Eurovision's main sponsor, and it's been that way since 2019, when the contest was hosted in Tel Aviv, because their products were used to style the artist's hair. Moroccan Oil, despite its blatantly misleading brand name, is an Israeli company, and has been criticized for both not saying where exactly the products are being made, and also for cultural appropriation, because, it's claiming that it's Moroccan. Many people are saying that because Eurovision's main sponsor is an Israeli company, that they don't want to disqualify or ban Israel, because otherwise they would lose that sponsor. I'm personally unsure if that's the case, which is probably not a very popular opinion. I feel like Moroccan Oil also needs Eurovision for exposure after all. But it's still a good point, and money definitely plays a part in Israel's inclusion, for sure. It's an especially damning reason when the justification for banning Russia in 2022 was that it would bring the contest into disrepute. Israel is also clearly bringing the contest into disrepute, but they aren't being banned. And that makes me think, maybe Russia wasn't actually banned for bringing the contest into disrepute, but really because so many countries threatened to drop out if Russia was allowed to participate, making the EBU lose even more funds. So yeah, I'm not sure how large of an effect Moroccan Oil had on the EBU's decisions, but I completely agree that money is a reason why Israel was still allowed to participate. Unfortunately, the company has been confirmed to still be Eurovision's main sponsor in 2025. I want to be more upset. I want to be angry. But as I'm sitting here typing this, I can't muster the strength to write any more mean comments. I'm inherently an optimistic person, and I want to trust people and give people the benefit of the doubt whenever possible. At one point I thought, I'm actually upset that Israel lost, because the EBU clearly didn't suffer the consequences enough. If Israel won, then many countries would have dropped out next year, and the protest against the EBU would have been so severe that they would be forced to change. But I can't say that. I'm so glad that Israel lost. I'm so glad that Eurovision is able to continue. When Ukraine received their televote points, temporarily taking first place off of Israel, I felt so incredibly relieved. Of course the tension remained after that because a winner hadn't been crowned yet, but it felt like a huge weight off of everyone's shoulders. I just wish this catalyst would have been enough to see more changes in the EBU, because it clearly wasn't enough. But at the same time, I don't want anything more drastic to happen, like Israel winning for example, even if it would be a bigger catalyst and would inspire more change. That would put even more pressure on artists to speak out, and maybe some violence could even occur. I don't want anyone behind the scenes to have to suffer through that. So I feel conflicted. On one hand, I'm glad that everyone came out of the experience safely, but on the other hand, I'm not sure if the EBU will change much after this. It makes me feel so powerless. Like everything I've said so far doesn't matter, because it's not going to inspire the EBU to change. Why would it? They're a company. As long as their loss of reputation doesn't affect their income, then there's no need to change. That obviously doesn't mean that we should just give up. Our protests so far have been heard to some extent. So if there's something the EBU does that we don't like, we should obviously make our voices heard. It's exactly as Nemo said, the trophy can be fixed, and maybe Eurovision needs a little bit of fixing too. However, I think that it could also be a great idea to be supportive of the artists, who are more able than us to change things from the inside, like Nemo, Bambi, and others have tried to do this year. So that's why, if I can't reach out to the EBU itself, I want to reach out to Eurovision fans, and urge them to be kinder to the artists. Remember the joint statement by several Eurovision artists demanding a ceasefire? I checked Ollie Alexander's original Instagram post of the statement, and the comment section is just vile. So many people going on about it being meaningless, and that they should just boycott the competition instead. Comments like these are all over the social medias of the competing artists, and seeing them disgusts me. These artists are so unlucky that one of the most important moments in their careers is happening at the same time as Israel committing a genocide, because it means that people are going to badger them until they personally do something about it. But they're artists, not politicians. They don't have the power to change the laws. When we talked about Nemo urging the Swiss government to recognize a third gender, that was all they could do. All Nemo could do was get enough leverage and support to force or convince the Swiss government to enact those changes. But Nemo can't do it on their own. These artists have already publicly displayed their disapproval of Israel, and are even raising awareness about the war. And I think it's just kind of mean to expect more from them. It is not okay to harass artists who don't make statements about Israel or any other social issues. That's their decision and you have to respect that. It's also not okay to harass artists simply because you don't like their song. There's a good reason why I talked positively about each performance in this video. The artists get enough hate as it is, and it would be cruel of me to add on to it. I'd just become another passenger on the internet hate train. If I ever talk negatively about the performances, then it's constructive criticism, and it's never directed at the artists personally. They don't deserve to be ridiculed so much. The EBU is supposed to be protecting their artists from this level of harassment, but as you can see by everything that happened this year, they were clearly not equipped to deal with it. All of the TikToks showing what the artists are doing backstage are nice. It's fun to see what they're up to, and it's also perfectly fine to film them if they're okay with it. But the artists are also real people who need privacy and time for themselves. Don't shove a camera into their faces just because you wanted to extract a little bit more content out of them. You're no better than the Israeli delegation if you do so. And even now that the contest is done, the artists are still getting harassed. Last year, the hottest topic was the split between the jury vote and the televote, and that debate sprung up again this year, with people being furious that Switzerland won instead of Croatia. But please, stop being mean to the winner just because they didn't win the televote. The juries aren't some nebulous entity whose sole purpose is to vote down songs that the public likes. They've been given very clear criteria to judge all of the performances with, and Nemo's performance had it all. While yes, getting 12 points from 22 juries is a bit much, and can make the reveals of the jury points quite boring if you already know what's coming next, it does not give you the right to go on a witch hunt. I've seen people intentionally misgender Nemo because they are angry at their victory, and it makes me sick to my stomach. It is the lowest jab you could ever take at a person, a last resort because you don't have any better arguments, and are just trying to hurt the person's feelings. If you don't like Nemo's performance, that's fine. You're entitled to your own opinion. But then at the very least, criticize their performance, not their gender identity. Accidentally misgendering someone is fine. I have done so before, and it is really easy to correct people in a respectable manner. No one will care. But if you do it on purpose, then I hesitate to call you a functioning, respectful adult. There are a grand total of 12 songs on the top layers of my tier list, and I would have been fine with it if any of them won. And one of them indeed did. I don't want to tell people what to feel. It's fine if you wanted a different performance to win, but just don't be rude. There were also some people on social media who urged people to settle for Croatia in the wake of Israel's potential victory. Not only would that give baby lasagna a hollow victory, since if they won you could say that they were only settled on for the greater good, the fact that people still blew up against Switzerland afterwards is ridiculous. You didn't want Israel to win, right? Wasn't that the original premise behind the whole movement? Then why still be so upset? Maybe I'm generalizing two different groups, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some overlap. With both people on social media and the Israeli delegation constantly harassing artists, yeah, it makes a lot of sense why Sylvester wanted to quit prematurely. I'd be stressed out of my mind as well in that situation. Maybe if you want the EBU to change, we should also think about changing ourselves. Not all of us are guilty of this, of course. I imagine if you're still watching, then you're probably chill. The annoying people aren't gonna sit down for a 2-hour-long YouTube video with stupid-looking balls on screen. And I truly appreciate everyone in the community who has spread positivity across social media. But this insane like to dislike ratio, it needs to go. I know I'm kind of just screaming into the void here. The internet will be the internet. But like, if I can convince even just one person to choose to be nice on the internet, it will have been worth it. And I swear, the amount of people with a blue checkmark next to their names who think they're hot shit annoy me to no end. Shut up, shush, 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 shush. And though there's only a minority of people who say this, the worst thing I keep seeing is Eurovision is apolitical, which is often used to justify why Israel is competing, even by the EBU itself. And you know, I've always wondered why I even like Eurovision to begin with. As I said before in this video, I'm one of those loser nerds who listens to video game OSTs. It's the music that's always playing in the background of my videos. That's what I like to listen to. Friends have jokingly made fun of me for it, of course, but they give me a warm feeling of nostalgia that I don't get with other types of music. So why do I care about Eurovision? I've never been into mainstream songs. If I were to make a video on like The Voice or The Masked Singer on my channel, my audience would probably be incredibly confused. So why is Eurovision different? Well, over the course of writing the script, I figured out why. I like Eurovision strictly because it's political. If you were to take away the country names and flags next to the artists, and didn't divide the points by each country, then it would be stripped down to a regular song contest. All you'd have are singers, who are coincidentally from different countries, competing for a Europe-wide throne. But that's not what makes Eurovision interesting, is it? Why has EBM always been talking about the secret voting blocks behind the points that were given out? Why have I always been talking about some countries having a distinct identity at Eurovision, like Ukraine or Portugal? Why are we also happy that the countries Iceland, Georgia and Latvia broke their non-qualification streak? It's because that's what makes Eurovision Eurovision. The context of each artist being from a different country, and each country giving out their own separate points is the heart and soul of it. To put it more simply, if Eurovision wasn't political, I wouldn't care. And I think that, for the majority of you, you wouldn't either. But despite all of it, I am absolutely 100% positive that the artists had the time of their lives at Eurovision. Maybe the sheer number of social media posts were overbearing, but they still show off how much fun they were having. I think it was a great idea to make the green room look like this. Before, everyone was isolated in their own little cubby, but here the entire room feels like one big room for every delegation. Everyone can talk to each other and dance with each other so easily with this setup, and the content that came out of it is delightful. I also don't think we've ever seen the artists congratulating the person who got the 12 points from their country's jury. It's so nice to see all of them be so supportive of each other. Especially when Nemo is singing their song for the last time, they're still holding on to the crown Bambi gave them in the green room. They're also covering each other's songs all the time on a whim backstage, and also collaborating with each other to create new songs. I've already mentioned Aiko and Thea making Hunger together, but there's also Traffic, made by Joost and Keria. I think that's what United by Music really means, as cliché as that might sound. All of the artists are friends with each other. This is not some fight to the death like people on social media are making it out to be. And that's why I think that everyone who participates in Eurovision is at least in some way a winner. Hey, welcome back as usual to the outro. So I thought this video was going to be about 2 hours long, so you can imagine my horror when I put all the segments into the timeline and got 2 hours and 40 minutes. Oh god, I am so sorry. But hey, you made it all the way to here. I cannot thank you enough. You probably like this style of content in that case, so subscribe if you want to. I don't really like asking that at the start of videos because it's annoying, but I'd say it's fair game in the outro. I'm quite happy with how this video turned out. I felt like last year's retrospective was a little bit rushed, which makes sense because I made it while studying for my exams, but you know, maybe I could have gone a little bit slower. But this time I think the order in which I did things made more sense, it feels more climactic, and also it isn't in 480p like the previous Africa video was. Don't know why it took me so long to get that in order, but better late than never. I also tried a kind of different editing style in the last 30 minutes, where I didn't pre-prepare all of the images, but instead kind of made things as I was going through it. Because of that, I used a lot of stupid memes and sound effects. I hope that was entertaining. Now let's talk future. I still promise that I'll make a video on the new European Union Parliament, but something has come up at the uni where I study, and that might involve extra in exile in some way. School does take priority over anything else, so that EU Parliament video will probably have to wait a little. But like, have you ever seen this TikTok comment? The time will pass anyways? Honestly, I've made this like my life philosophy at this point. Like yeah, it might take a while for that video to come out, but the time will pass anyways. So, it's okay. Oh, and also, I'm just a tad late, but happy second birthday to Extra in Exile. Here's to another year of inconsistent upload schedules. And that's all I wanted to say here. See ya!